Inside a roaring adventurers guild, a young guy with dark spiky hair leans by the window, hands shoved in his pockets, quietly watching the whole hustle unfold. His calm watch gets ripped apart when a tall blonde guy steps right in his face, blasting complaints about the long line, accusing him of cutting and snarling that he should get back where he belongs, so hard it makes the dark-haired guy freeze in shock. Roger Mann scoffs at the idea that an E-rank tamer like Arga even has the nerve to boss him around as a B-rank adventurer, and the moment Arga's pride gets hit, his face hardens with pure, burning rage. It loomed over him, snarling down at the smaller man and mocking him like he was nothing, demanding the weakling know his place. Right before the confrontation can blow up, a hand snaps down on the blonde adventurer's head. She freezes, stares up in shock, and his furious rant gets cut off instantly. Confusion snaps into shock when he spots the newcomer, an unshaken, bearded man with sharp-pointed ears, who calmly tells him that cutting in line is a big no, and the adventurer starts stammering as he realizes it's the guildmaster. With the aggressor dealt with, the guildmaster turns his fury to Arga and snaps that Arga needs to report the whole thing to the staff right away because this could get the offender demoted. That he cuts himself off, waves it off, and decides to let it slide for today. He shoots you an awkward little smile, shrugs it off like it's no big deal since he's got free time, and as he talks, a bead of sweat slips down his temple. He strides up to the guild counter and tells the receptionist he's here to report his exit from Kanedo's party, then turns to go in right. As he does, Guildmaster Nimmerus clocks him with a sharp, questioning stare. She turns and walks off as a blonde woman watches him, then flashes a sly, wry smile like she already knows exactly what went down. 3 hours earlier, spiky-haired Kanado lounges in a throne-like chair, flanked by 2 women, and when he jabs his finger toward Arga, he booms, "Arga, I'm banishing you!" He freezes in stunned silence, the words punching a hole through his mind, and Arga demands what banishment even means, and whether he slipped up and did something wrong. Kanado only scoffs, calling it an insult, saying his ears and head must be terrible if he's a tamer at all. One of Kanados' companions, a woman with light, shoulder-length hair, slams forward and screams that they don't need him, the tamer who can only befriend monsters. Kanado rips into his logic with full volume yelling, claiming tamers level up way too slow since every monster buddy forces them to split the experience points, and then he slams Arga hard, barking that he's the only one left stuck at E-rank and acting like Arga's monsters don't matter at all. Without them, Kanado says Arga is nothing but a weakling. Argo erupts in protest, demanding to know what's wrong with being a tamer, and reminds Kanado that this was settled back when he joined them 2 years ago, only for Kanado to shoot back coldly, that was then, not now. He spits that someone who drags the whole party down isn't a companion. He lands the final insult, spitting out that people like that are dead weight, and behind him, his 2 buddies cackle like villains. The memory fades, and Arda can't help but stew in bitterness because of them. He's got all this free time now. He leaned on the guild counter while the receptionist stared at his adventure, card unchanged for 2 years, then offered to update his registration. And under all that watchful eyes, Arga quietly gave the nod. With a strained look on his face, he asked if she should proceed. Then the receptionist beamed like nothing was wrong, and inside, he seethed at how he finally had all the time in the world now that he'd been banished. She snapped a glowing crystal orb into view, and he just stared at it, confused about what it was, while irritation sparked from her endless persistence. She grinned and told him it was a brand new status checker. This thing reads your adventurous status, straight from the crystal like it's watching you in real time. Nimmer says, the old written application system was a mess because people kept forging the forms, and the receptionist adds that the crystal's info shoots straight onto the card, so Arga is left staring in shock. The moment it kicked off, she leaned in and read his basic details out loud from the crystal. Arga Rebellion, 18 years old, human, and rank E. She kept digging through Tamer, then right before she even paused, a brand new, unfamiliar occupation flashed on the crystal, Frusianus. His first reaction hit like a punch, pure disbelief, so he jabbed a finger at the device and shouted that it was broken, while the receptionist just blinked and stared at him, completely lost. He swears he knows nothing about being a fusionist, but Nemorus, the guildmaster, won't budge, insisting the crystal is never wrong. The Ruing Dishkill mixed fusion art The guildmaster's eyes snap wide as the truth hits. This isn't just a skill, it's a whole second job, a second life. He tells the stunned Arga that most folks juggle just one job, but in rare, unbelievable cases, someone can hold down two at once. Ardo's shock flips into pure adrenaline as he realizes this isn't just a job change, it's something way bigger. He just stares down those wild odds, and then a second job shows up, a once-in-a-thousand-years miracle. It hits him like a thunderclap. His fist snaps shut in pure triumph, because suddenly he's convinced he's that rare once-in-a-thousand-years prodigy, the living proof that his whole fate has flipped. Namera's triumphant moment gets yanked away when he admits, still staring thoughtfully, that he's never heard of the fusionist occupation either. And right there, Argus's big excitement collapses into an awkward, sheepish smile. He weighs the name in his head, face going stone cold as he mutters his guess, out loud. This occupation has to be the kind that lets you crossbreed monsters. His spark of excitement fizzles into pure disappointment. He starts doubting his own monster crossbreeding theory, like it's something any tamer could pull off. And he admits his heart was riding on a once-in-the-thousand-years rarity that got treated like nothing. Next to him, Namera's sweating hard, while the guild receptionist and he trade quick looks, and the guildmaster mutters in disbelief. Anyone can do it. The guildmaster blurts out one confused word. What? And the whole room feels it. Then only moments later, outside the guild hall, Arga stands there just as baffled. He flicks his eyes back to the building, and a nasty doubt crawls into his head, so he was the one who had to do it, not them. He shoves the thought aside, turns his back, and strides into the open field with a blank card clutched in his hand. He spots a perfect spot, drops down, shoves the card out in front, and barks the order to the creatures inside. "All right then, come out, you guys." Reacting to it, the card spits out a handful of dark energy beams that tear across the field and slam into the ground near that far-off building. With a blinding flash, 3 pocket-sized monsters pop into existence. A baby dragon, a tiny wolf, and a plain little slime. August grins as he sits down before them, and he tells the creatures they're about to become the launch pad for his next fusion experiment. Then he commands the system to bring up their status. Their stats snap into view and they're shockingly low. The baby dragon and baby wolf are both only level 10, while the slime crawls in at level 15. He clocks it instantly. These stats are downright awful. He studies the grid of possible components, then makes his call, so you'll start with the baby dragon, Lala, and try to fuse it with a bat. Then it cuts to Arga, chatting with Namera and the guild receptionist, and he explains he's been doing these fusions naturally until the guildmaster jumps in, reminding everyone that a tamer's power is meant only for commanding monsters. With disbelief blazing across his face, he bluntly challenges Arga. How in the world did you think any tamer could do that? They can't crossbreed monsters to spawn new ones. Caught off guard, Arga stumbles over his words, blurting out the real reason he's so clueless. With a jittery grin, he admits he never set foot in school. Every skill he has is self-taught, and then he drops the bomb. He's never even met another tamer, so he had no clue there were limits to his own class. He sagged in defeat, crushed that the guildmaster and the receptionist had seen his miserable life, because they didn't just banish him, they left him with 0 friends. But he shoved the melancholy aside, snapped out of it, and declared with fresh fire that it was time to get back on track fusion. Now, a shimmering interface popped up in front of him, offering one wild choice: fuse a baby dragon with a bat. He let out a heavy sigh and accepted it. Yeah, he was a fusionist now. But for a second he wondered if calling it mixed fusion sounded way cooler than whatever they were labeling him. With 0 hesitation, he slammed his finger down and hit *USS, sealing the choice for good. Then boom! A brilliant blaze tore through the air, wrapping the 2 creatures in glowing light the moment the fusion process kicked off. When the lights dimmed, a brand new creature stepped into the spotlight in Lola's place. Her body was mostly the same, but her wings had reshaped themselves, and her color had shifted like a nightmare in motion. The monster in progress let out a tiny cry, and Arga just watched, stunned by what appeared. Then he yanked up the creature's status and stared hard at every change. Overall stats down, sure, but its racial skills were untouched, and it even inherited the bat's ultrasonic wave ability. A huge grin split his face, and even with his base stats taking a hit, he declared, thrilled, that the monster was stronger than ever. He stared down at his brand new monster, determination blazing in his eyes, and swore right there, as the fusionist, that he'd forge it into something even more powerful. Then he locked eyes with the small pack of monsters circling him and delivered a sharp line about how insanely lucky they were. A shadow slid across his face as he broke down his planned fusion could make them unstoppable. But bitterness burned in his chest, because for someone who had that talent said to appear once in a millennium, he was still stuck feeling weak. His hand clenched into a tight fist, and you could feel his raw, burning hunger to get stronger, right there, just as they could. Frustration exploded in his chest as his mind snapped to those adventurers who'd brushed him off, and he kept replaying their mocking faces, desperate to show them all they were wrong. He sank into the dead-still wasteland, and those tiny monster buddies were the only crowd willing to listen. And then, bam, an earth-shaking thought ignited in his mind, zeroing in on the truth of his fusion power. A terrifying idea snapped into place. He remembered a brutal truth. Humans and monsters were almost the same, both magically and biologically, so the thought hit like a hammer. What if a human and a monster could be fused into one? The question wouldn't leave him alone, pulsing in his mind like doom and desire at the same time, and he had to wonder if he should fuse himself with a monster. He weighs every move, sweat pouring down his brow as he debates fusing with a weaker arachne, because one wrong step could leave him as a monstrous chimera or straight up end him. Even with danger breathing down his neck, his resolve turns iron, because the chance to steal monster power, to finally get strong, is impossible to ignore. He clenches his fist, locks in, and launches his mixed fusion art. A blinding surge of energy erupts from his hands, swallowing him whole in an instant, and the sheer blast hurls his tiny monster buddies tumbling backward through the dust and wreckage. When the glow fades, he locks eyes on his own hands in pure relief, hits him so hard he almost can't breathe. He made it. He flings his arm up in victory, basking in his when nothing feels weird, until it hits him. Wait, what about his status window? The noof. His celebration gets cut off mid-cheer as his eyes bulge wide and a jolt of pure, utter shock slams into him. A system notification pops up in front of him and he bursts out laughing like he can't believe it because his race just got officially rewritten as Demon Human, and that twist unlocks his status screen. He stares at his hands as a faint aura crawls out of them because the truth hits hard. He's no longer human. Inside the loud, lively Adventurers Guild, warriors and mages churn around, eyes locked on the quest board, hunting for their next paycheck. Then one adventurer rips a notice off the wall and grins like he's just found his next mission. The crowd parts as Argo rockets forward a billion strides with a quest slip already clenched tight, and as he slips past, another adventurer leans in, asking if there are any good requests available around here. He shoots the question down like it doesn't exist. Eyes locked in one direction, then with a brutal thud, he slaps the paper on the reception counter and roars, "I'll take this job." The receptionist stared at the request, then snapped through the details, gobbling extermination in the Northern Plains. "Simple," she said, and made it clear the payout was lousy. Arga nodded like it didn't matter at all. He just needed a chance to test how strong he truly was. That answer makes her freeze. Then the receptionist sizes him up and fires off a surprise question. Was he always this tall? Argus is caught off guard, scratches the back of his head, and stammers out something uncertain. She presses him for answers, and he finally leans in, mysteriously admitting that, somehow, he's been reborn. And the weird physical changes she's seeing? That weird explanation hits the receptionist like a truck. She goes totally speechless, staring in pure confusion like her brain can't even accept what she just heard. Without another word, Argus shoots a quick goodbye and bolts for the exit then. As he's gone, the receptionist leans toward Namera and admits she can't shake the feeling that something about Arga just doesn't add up. She barreled on with her report to Namera, saying Arga swore he'd been reborn and jumped at some low-paying gig like it was fate. That he was probably just chasing a fresh start. Namera's pause hit hard. Her words made him question everything, and he blurted why a total pro would ever sign up for a simple goblin extermination job, especially out in the Northern Plains. Her worry clawed deeper into her chest, and she couldn't stop wondering if Argo would be okay while up in the Northern Plains, where danger lurks in every shadow, A little swarm of goblins just milled around, totally clueless that an adventurer was closing in. Far from the guild, Argus stood shoulder to shoulder with his monstrous crew, staring into the darkness at goblins no one could see. He grinned, treating them like the ultimate sparring partners, because he wanted to measure the power he'd just unlocked after that fusion. Then his creatures roared in unison, like they couldn't wait to prove it. Becoming a demonic human wrecked his old life force, and magic power shot up to 4 times, and his attack power blasted from a tiny 5 to a monstrous 81. Ever since he fused with that spider-type monster, his mind wouldn't stop buzzing with his new powers silk shooting from his body, and the one ability that really hooked him? Final Evolver. He stared at his own hand, and a faint surge of energy pulsed out of it. Then it hit him, with experience doubling while the needed amount got cut in half. His next steps were about to accelerate like crazy. Just as he started to think, he peeked over the rocks and boom, a goblin encampment stretched out before him. He tried to stay hidden, but his stealth crumbled. One sentry snapped around, its eyes locked onto him in the blink of an eye. They'd been spotted. He rockets straight into the offense, pointing ahead and barking an order at his draconic partner. Lala, ultrasonic wave. And the little dragon's mouth flares as energy starts to pile up. The wave blasts out, knocking the goblins into a daze, and he grins. Yeah, that bat fusion skill is paying off big time. The Mamdas forward, shoving his other monsters forward. All of you now, Kamal sends out and calls Kangilsons. His companions slam forward like a wave. The slime is fused with cobalt and can now bite. And the little wolf mixed with a boar now charges straight in. So when they clash with the goblins, Argus snaps to the truth. He can't just stand there and do nothing. He vaults over his monsters and crashes straight into the goblin crowd, blade blazing as it whips through the air one clean swing. And a goblin's head is severed before it even hits the ground. Another goblin drops instantly cleaved cleanly in half from head to toe. He halts dead in his tracks, staring at the carnage like it's impossible. And the terrifying ease of those kills leaves him stunned for a beat. His mind spins in a frenzy after what just happened. He remembers his old weakness, how he couldn't even cut properly, yet now he's standing there staring at his own hand like he's hallucinating, because there's no way he just split a creature in 2 with that battered knife. His confusion gets smashed to pieces the moment a wave of system notifications hits. He levels up again and again, back to back, faster than he can even breathe, and he's left staring in disbelief. How can goblins do this to him, especially with a skill already boosting ESP? Then the real question claws at him. Did his companion's kills feed him experience too? He stared at the status screen with his jaw on the floor. His monster's stats had skyrocketed, and somehow his own felt unreal, like they'd been turned up to maximum. His eyes bulged as the numbers hit attack power, 241. Agility 3-1, and suddenly he understood those were A-rank numbers, maybe even S-rank level. And the realization slammed him hard. He could actually become the strongest. Just as he hit that jaw-dropping revelation, a thunderous roar ripped through the air ahead. He snapped his head up, stunned, totally lost. Right ahead of him loomed the source itself, a monstrous 2-legged bear, its fur so sharp and packed that it looked like 1,000 blades waiting to strike. He just stood there, eyes locked, sweat dripping down his temple as his brain screamed, trying to make sense of that creature. Meanwhile, it looked like I had stumbled into a guild hall. Then a young woman with tiny horns snapped her head up in shock and demanded details, refusing to believe that a sword bear had really been spotted out on the northern plains. The guildmaster, Namera's fears confirmed, swore there'd been fresh sightings. Then the horned woman went right into it, a sword bear, a beast branded as a solid sea cranks. She just couldn't shake one doubt. Was everyone panicking over a threat that, overall, wasn't all that high? Namera broke the truth wide open. This monster's fur was razor sharp. Its arms hit like wrecking balls, and its claws sliced like blades, and Argo's attack power alone already counted as a rank. The woman's face drained of color as she gasped, insisting Argo was just an E-rank adventurer. The terror in her heart was simple. If he ran into the beast at the guild, he'd die on the spot. But once the battle began, Argus's mind snapped into a new plan. His demon-human transformation had pushed his companion art to the limit, and suddenly the idea of taming it wasn't crazy anymore. He shut that thought down fast, chose what mattered right now, and barked at his companions to back off. He locked onto a brand new goal, then swore he'd crush this one too, and when that determination hit, the sword bear erupted in a deafening roar. He surged forward with his blade blazing in hand, fueled by one burning promise. If he took down that A-rank monster, the experience would flood in and level him up all at once. That beast moved at lightning speed, slashing forward with a brutal growl. Arga barely threw himself out of the way, and it hit him like a punch. A simple knife would get shredded against that blade-like fur, and even switching to his fists felt like a losing gamble. As the monsters crashed down on the spot he just left, he snapped a thin, tough thread into place and swung to safety. Thank every star for that spider skill. He landed hard, but the truth hit like a punch. His weapon just wasn't working for him. Rage-like resolve snapped into his eyes. Fine. He'd switch to something else. He jerked his hand forward and pulled out a razor-thin, shimmering thread that caught the light. He wrapped the material tight around his knuckles, forging it into rock-solid hand wraps. Then, once his new weapons were ready, he flashed a confident smirk like he was about to unleash something big. He roars as his fists slip into the spider silk gloves he just invented. Then he charges straight into a no-holds-barred confrontation. He bursts forward at breakneck speed, declaring he's done being scared of the monster's bladed armor, leaving the sword bear stunned by this sudden, fearless attack. His fists turn into a blur, hammering the creature's body with one crushing hit after another, each impact thundering like it's shaking the air. He lands the final, devastating hit, cracking the monster's brutal defenses wide open as bladed fur shards explode through the air. Standing over the defeated beast, the weight of what he's done hits him like a wave. He really won. And he crushed a C-rank monster solo. This win sparks a raging new fire in his chest. He swears he'll get even stronger, strong enough to make Kanado and the others choke on the decision to betray him. Under a blazing clear sky, the Adventurers Guild looms in cold stone, its windows flashing with the morning light. Inside, Argus strides up to the reception counter like he owns the place, saying his request will be done in a flash. Then he announces he's leaving, and the receptionist sends him off with a warm wish. Just as he's about to bolt, a huge hand rockets into view and slams in front of his face, freezing him mid-step with a sharp, startled cry. Tamer, the guildmaster, grabs Arga's hand and gently tells him not to sprint into the guild, then shoots. "Are you in a rush?" Flustered, Arga blurts out a quick apology. Tamer tossed off her warning like it was nothing, and her waves kept rolling as she clocked that Arga had somehow gotten stronger, making the nearby receptionist gasp in shock. He locks in on the young man, eyes razor sharp, and Tamer clocks the insane jump in Argus's dynamic vision and agility. His whole body now belongs to someone else entirely. As Arga storms off, the receptionist can't believe what she just saw, and Tamer backs her up. She can't swear it from a quick look, but Arga's definitely acting like he's at a top-tier level now. His eyes lock onto Arga as she slips away, and a deep, thoughtful look hits his face like he's wondering right out loud if Arga is going to take requests again today. Reviewed the records and clocked Arga's latest moves. Then the receptionist backed it up, saying Arga's been spending his time slaughtering horn rabbits, even hitting them multiple times a day, doing nothing but low-stakes, menial kill jobs. She snapped that you can't shoot up that fast off simple, basic work alone, and maybe the master's proof about Argus's growth was nothing but imagination. His words did nothing to calm him, so he stayed silent, fingers worrying his goatee as deep doubt churned inside. Meanwhile, Arga's mind raced as he plotted his next. Strike those horn rabbits could power a fusion, so he decided on the spot to capture and tame one. With his plans locked in, he reached for the move, then Sharp's voice cut through the air, freezing him mid-step. He spun back toward the guildmaster and the receptionist, firing off a question. Did they need him for anything? Just as he opened his mouth, two hulking, muscular brutes slammed into place to block his way, their massive frames looming over him like a wall of shadow. The mohawked man swaggered up and said he was Norsher, and his partner was Razzle then Razzles. Eyes snapped shut with recognition as he clocked Arga. The E-ring tamer Canada had banished. Norsher, the mohawk maniac, boomed with full-throated love for their idol, Kanato, who crushed the S rank at just 18, and Norshur swore that tons of adventurers, including them, were chasing the dream of joining Kanato's party. With a dismissive smirk, he tossed out that even with all their praise, some so-called weakling like him had still been welcomed into that party for a full 2 years. He flicked his hand like it was nothing, begging them to let him go, especially if this was just jealousy over his old days with Kanato. But that laid-back act only set them off harder, and they snarled back that it was his insolent attitude that truly burned them, leaving Arga stunned for a beat. Razzle's fury detonated the moment he stared at Arga, still smiling after wrecking everything for their idol. He roared that Arga should stop pretending, look at what he'd done, and feel real remorse. Then demanded he finally remember his place. Marga's confusion curdled into raw fury, and he snapped back, demanding why the burden had to land on him, declaring Kanato was the real problem. Trash, who had shoved him into the party and then ignored him until the very end. The furious counter-accusations hit Razzleston like a punch. His brutal, sharp condemnation detonated then. He didn't just stop there. Pure rage took over, and both he and Norshur drew their weapons, snarling that they'd beat the E-rank Brad into learning his place for looking down on them. Pio. A sudden surge of trouble yanked the guild staff's attention. When the receptionist saw weapons come out, she panicked, spun to the guildmaster, and demanded they stop this before it sparks into a brawl, while across the room Arga snapped a small blade from his sleeve and tightened up, ready to fight. The guildmaster stayed ice calm, lifted a hand, and told the receptionist to hold up. Then, with a sharp, measuring stare, he said this was the perfect chance to see just how wildly Arda had leveled up. Razzle and Norshur hit together with a thunderous roar. Razzle slams his sword down in a brutal overhead swing, while Norshur blasts forward with his massive fist, trying to pulverize the suddenly helpless Arga. But their perfectly timed strike just slams into empty air. Argus whips aside in a flash, dodging the blade and the fist at once, and their whole charge carries them right past him like a miss. Their own hits slam them off balance and they stumble. Hard. Razzle snarls, furious at that wild miss. From the side, Guildmaster Namera and his receptionist watch the whole exchange in silence, their faces impossible to read. He whips around to face them, pure disappointment blazing in his eyes, then tears into them, calling out their stupidity for dragging weapons into the guild, and asking straight up if they're really that clueless. The onlookers buzz with disbelief, staring in shock. Two B-rank adventurers got brushed aside so easily by some E-rank Tamer, and now he's wagging the lesson in their faces like they're nothing but kids. Their public humiliation slams the final nail in their rage. Razzle clenches his fist, furious at how everything just spiraled. Arga and Norshur explode into another round of furious swings, but Arga just slips under every wild blow like it's nothing. As he dodges the blow, a sudden thought hits him. Something's off. Then, it clicks hard. There's no way B-rank Adventures is really this slow. Razzle and Norshur stared in shock at how badly they messed up, remembering how quickly their stance collapsed. And now, they couldn't shake the fear that Arga was playing them, tricking their focus to get an opening or setting some other kind of trap. Sensing their hesitation, Arga couldn't figure out what was wrong. Yet, a bead of sweat slid down his temple. He knew something was off, so he made up his mind. He had to ask. He lunged in hard, snapping his palm up into Razzle's chin with a brutal, bone-jarring punch. His plan was locked in. If they were pretending to be clueless, he'd play right along, ready for the moment an opening finally slipped through. Now that both adventurers were down on the ground, Argo stared them down, tense and on guard because they weren't moving at all, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just another trap, waiting to spring the next strike from somewhere nearby. Suddenly, a hand shot up like a warning flare, and the whole confrontation got shut down. It was Namera's guildmaster's property, so he stepped forward without a shake, calmly cutting in. "That's enough, artist son." Arga's eyes snapped up, stunned that he'd stepped in. The guildmaster slammed the final word, then said both of them were already done for, unable to fight anymore. Arga refused to believe it, insisted they still had a play in motion, and shoved Nimerus aside. He froze in stunned silence while the guild receptionist stared at her data slate and said his senses were lagging behind his real power, because according to her, B-ranks just couldn't be that weak. Namera looked him dead in the eye and said, "Everyone gets it except you, Argy. You just got strong enough to crush B-ranks." The receptionist fired back, yelling that Razzle and Norsher were B ranks, right on the edge of A rank status. Then she dropped the bomb. Arga, the Tamer, beat them without a single monster, and his moves were leagues beyond anything an E rank could pull off. The guildmaster's stare locked on with steel as he barked a straight order. Arga was to rein it in from here on out, and the poor guy immediately started sweating, only managing a shaky, stammered yes. His mind reeled when he heard that word restraint, and it hit him like a gut punch. He'd grown so strong that in a fight, he had to hold back. He stared at that new reality for a second, then turned and walked away. Namera watched him vanish, her face set in deep thought as Arga disappeared down the corridor. As soon as he disappeared, the receptionist hurried up to the guildmaster and blurted out that Arga had gotten insanely strong like it happened overnight. Then she hinted that his second job was probably tied to it, while another guild member watched. Nimmer admitted he couldn't be certain, but he promised he'd dig deeper into Argo. He hovered by the counter when a woman with long, flowing hair slid up. She'd caught the chatter about a second job, and she wanted to know if they were talking about the guy who just walked out. Her arrival snapped everyone's eyes to the guild hall, and whispers immediately ignited over her breathtaking beauty until the receptionist's sudden gasp tore the room apart. Wide-eyed, she recognized the newcomer, Sissel. The woman strolled on, calm as ever. A sheath katana was. This wasn't some run-of-the-mill adventurer. This was Sissel Sergil, an SSS-ranked powerhouse, who everyone swore was humanity's strongest. With an intense, curious stare, she leaned in like she couldn't hold it. In there was a question blazing in her eyes. She wanted answers about that man from earlier, demanding to know who that beautiful person was and insisting they spill every detail. In the pitch-black heart of a dungeon, a giant, many-eyed centipede erupts into wild thrashing, its armored body grinding and scraping the cramped stone walls as it lashes out. The young adventurer bolts in terror, eyes bulging as the creature dives at him, and he barely slips past its snapping mandibles. He grabs a breath for a second, slumps against the rock, and a sick dread hits him because the beast has slammed the path forward shut for good. Clenching his teeth, he growls a curse for Kanado and swears revenge if he doesn't make it. Then a voice behind him snaps, asking if he really just said Kanado's name. He whirls around, and there, at the cavern's mouth, stands a young woman with long dark hair, staring at him with a dead flat, neutral face. Stairs stood there, totally stunned, staring at her like, "Why are you alone out here?" Then she washed him a bright, harmless smile and said she was hunting down Kanado's party because she had something urgent she needed to ask them. Her face sharpens into curiosity as she questions whether he knows where they went, because they were supposed to enter this dungeon. The debility already. That question slams him with a brand new gut punch memory. His face twists in pure anguish as he remembers when his own party turned on him, Kanado's voice ringing out, "You're a useless tamer." Then Kanado firing him and walking off, leaving him stranded. He replayed the taunts from his old party, the insults crashing in his head as he fought tooth and nail to reach the dungeon's exit by himself. Her voice sliced straight through his thoughts, demanding, "Did Kanado ever tell you anything about the party's old tame Arga?" He filled in the name and shot back that he'd heard of Arga, then snapped, furious because people kept putting them side by side. Right as that anger hit, Kanado's memory clawed its way in. Arga would have known the monster's name, and everyone else's knowledge paled in comparison. Her curiosity snapped to full focus, and the girl leaned in, hard pushing for answers, asking if he knew anything about Argus's exact abilities. He glanced back at her, eyebrows knitting, like he was asking if she meant the power to crossbreed monsters. That question yanked Kanado back into a gut-punching memory him. Hearing Kanado scream they'd hired an incompetent tamer, even worse than Arga, and how he'd freaked out with that panic defense. Crossbreeding wasn't part of a tamer's job. It was its own completely different skill. Back in the present, he leaned in and told the girl his old party had watched it happen so many times they just shrugged and treated it like a run-of-the-mill skill his class could do. The moment she heard it, her face lit up with pure excitement. She shot forward, eyes blazing, and demanded he spill every single detail. On a barren, rocky wasteland, the tamer Arga stands beside a small creature, eyes narrowed as he scans the dead silence of the desolate land, deep in thought. His eyes lock on something bigger, now an enormous creature standing right in front of him, growling low. And just like that, the monster that flared with power when it leveled up has totally transformed into something shocking. He spots the creature's new shape, a tiny chimera dragon, and names it Lala, fully seeing its evolution. But as his hand settles on its scaly head, he can't shake how grotesque it looks. A wave of guilt crashes over him as he finally admits it's on him, because he kept sloppily fusing monster after monster with near-zero compatibility, and he never once realized those fusion materials could twist the evolution path so brutally. He keeps running his own mental checklist. Sure, the creature stats aren't terrible, but its shape still creeps him out, and then his mind jumps to another monster, Kidra, as he figures out his next move, staring toward the nearby location. His eyes lock onto a man-made pit sunk into the ground, stone steps worn by time spiraling down into a wall of darkness. So what is this? The entrance to some secret underground world? A battered stone marker nearby snaps the truth into place. This is the Palpari Labyrinth. Argus stands right at the mouth of the labyrinth, staring down a heavy barred door that's only cracked open, and he's definitely not alone. Lala, his newly evolved companion, plus a tiny white wolf and a plain little slime are right there with him, waiting to dive in. He stood tall at the entrance of the Palpari Labyrinth, swaggering with his monstrous crew right beside him. Convinced this was a beginner-friendly dungeon, something they could bulldoze with their current power, no problems at all. His goal was crystal clear. Lala's evolution was still in motion, and he was determined to steer it back on track. The matter had hid the fusion materials he needed to force the change. He patted the chimera dragon he called Kidra, then snapped, "All right, let's go." The second they stepped in, trouble hit. Tiny insect-like fiends poured down the corridor, while a goblin with a crew blade barreled forward, and Lala sprinted in to smash them head-on. Rage flashed across his face, his eyes narrowing as he burst into action beside his friends. He barked orders for his monsters to scatter the weak ones and lock their focus on something bigger, because his real quarry was the metal stag beetle. He even spelled out the plan out loud to steer Lala toward the right evolution, and the trick was simple. She needed both beetle-type and steel-type elements, and this beast had both. He spotted the opening and lunged ahead, arms stretched out, ready to kick off the taming process. He barked the command, "Tame," and the beetle refused to budge, slipping from his grip over and over as he tried again and again. His last shot failed and rage hit him all at once when it clicked. In this world, a tamer can try to take down the same monster only 3 times. After he couldn't tame the metal stag beetle, he snapped it in half with a clean slash, its wings still buzzing but completely helpless. That blast of power shot through him, and he leveled up 6 times in the blink of an eye. Their massive experience and carry on, and with ironclad grit, he set his sights on going deeper into the lab. From a safe distance, the dark-haired girl watched Arga mash monsters together, and she stared as their colors warped. Wait, if their bodies changed, do their powers change too? She muttered. The abandoned tamer beside her shrugged and admitted he couldn't say for sure, but he guessed the same thing. Arga and his monstrous crew could grow brutally strong. She spun him around and demanded answers, and when he started talking, he admitted he'd heard a rumor about Arga. His voice dropped as he spilled the rumor Argo was fusing a baby dragon. Still, their chat got ripped apart when a grotesque, multi-eyed monster erupted from the ground with a savage roar and slammed straight toward the shocked tamer. In a blink, the danger vanished. Dead silence after the blow. The dark-haired girl towered over the monster's corpse, breathing out in relief as she confirmed exactly what it was. The tamer just gawked, frozen, finally realizing how insanely lucky he'd been. She'd her blade, flashed him a grin, and told him he was lucky too, because now, she said, he could finally cut those nasty people out of his life and make it home safe. With one final, razor-clean strike, she took down that grotesque beast. Its split head dropped onto the ground, with nothing left but silence. Her brutal display of power froze the tamer mid-breath. He stammered, eyes locking on her jet-black sword, and blurted if she was really the legendary SSS rank adventurer Sissel, then offered to escort him out, and his thanks came tumbling after her. As they burst out of the labyrinth, the world snapped right back to the guild hall, where Nemera sifted through a report and kept talking out loud about Arga, amazed by how he somehow managed to be both a tamer and a fusionist. The guild receptionist caught him and snapped, asking whether he really grasped what Argus could do, reminding him that Nimras was his friend only for the guild master to shut it down, saying they weren't that close, even as he admitted he still talked to him all the time. He kept going, saying he'd heard Arga was traveling with a baby dragon and that the receptionist even grilled him on the species' weakness. Nimmer finally cleared it up. Dragons can't be tamed at all. They only bow to people they decide are powerful or talented enough to prove it. That's when the receptionist snapped to the conclusion that Arga must have real talent, and Nimmers nodded only if this taming was legit. He still hadn't proven it with his own eyes, so he swore he'd head out and check it himself. Once he was gone, the receptionist got a confirmation of something big, and with a sharp look in her eyes, she took matters into her own hands, tracking down Argus's old companions to get their side of the story. Meanwhile, Arda found herself staring straight at the real Sizzle, and when she reached out to him, hope lit up her face as she practically begged him to be the one who could finally make her dream come true. Inside the stone-walled labyrinth, a massive horned ogre bellows while it rages in battle against a tiny bird-like monster that darts in to strike. The little creature hits with perfect precision. Its beak rips into the ogre's shoulder, blood sprays out, and the bigger beast jerks back, stumbling hard. As the clash rages on, Arga a billion locks on and realizes the ogre is finally spent, and then, with chilling calm, he decides it's time to take control. Realizing just how fast his crew has leveled up, he realizes that even a D-ranked labyrinth boss isn't worth their time anymore. To prove he's right, the ogre screams a savage, guttural roar yanked by another unseen hit. A thunderous punch slams clean into the monster's head, and that brutal crack echoes like a shockwave. Ogre's eyes bulge with shock, and its whole body shakes under the brutal impact of that strike. Arga's fist drives straight into the dazed creature's face-calm confidence blazing in his eyes, with a sly little smirk that dares it to fight back. He smirks down at the subdued ogre, realizing these deranked monsters can't touch him anymore. PVU! He slaps his hand onto the monster's head, kicks off the taming, and the ogre's body twitches, then breaks apart into glowing particles. Right where the trap was, a solid chest drops into existence with a soft thud, and Argus's eyes snap to the sudden, unexpected boss draw. Leaning in hard, his curiosity hit max. What kind of treasures could that chest possibly be hiding? A few months later, he strolls through the city streets with a bright grin on his face, soaking in just how wildly lucky he is. Turns out his luck was even wilder than he imagined. Inside that chest weren't just one rare find, but two, the ogre's legendary drops, the horns of battle. That jaw-dropping luck hits him. He does the math. One rare drop is a 1 in 10,000 shot, but two drops landing back-to-back is only 1 in 100,000. Then he clenches his fists and grins because he just survived a crazy 1 in 100 million stroke of fortune. Jostling through the packed street, he stared at his sudden wealth like it might explode. Sure, that horn was worth thousands of gold, enough to live like a king for years, so he plotted to stash one and sell the other until a voice he knew like his own name cut through the crowd and froze his plans. And when he turned, surprise hit his face hard. He jerked his gaze upward, face twisted, and instantly clocked the blonde adventurer. "Ugh, it's Kanado," he muttered. Then Arga's eyes widened as he saw the drastic changes in his physique, and he immediately demanded to know what happened to his body. The question just hung there while he digested the change. Then it hit him. He used to have to stare up at Kanado. So did going demon, becoming human, and leveling up really trigger this huge, jaw-dropping growth? His thoughts got yanked to a stop. The second Kanado's companion started jeering. Especially that ponytail woman who teased him like he was just embarrassed for being short, and then the hooded one slid in with a smug smirk, claiming he must have been popping strange drugs. Just nearby, Nimmer inspected the prize Arga had snagged, and, sure enough, he confirmed it was an ogre's rare drop. Kanado, hearing that, scoffed hard like it was impossible. His companions jumped in fast, piling on the accusations like fuel on a fire, claiming he either swiped it or got it as some charity handout after hitching his life to a stronger crew. and those wild, baseless rumors made Arga's anger ignite. Kanado flicked his hand like the whole thing was trash, dismissing the find, and told Arga it was fine, no need to show off, because it was only a deer ink drop. But Arga snapped back, flustered and furious, that he'd earned it himself with his own monsters. Then, they smashed his pride even harder. One of the women raised a glittering ring for everyone to stare at and barked, "Look!" like it was a victory trophy, proudly declaring their party had landed a Barank rare drop. He spotted it the second it hit. "A Ghost Prince rare drop, huh?" He smirked, then snapped his cold eyes back to Arga. He said, just like he expected, Arga only had knowledge. Everything else about him was trash, and then he taunted, asking if Arga was jealous. Right then, Kanato stepped in and hit Arga with a smug offer. If Arga really wanted back in, Kanato would let him return to their party, claiming he'd only get access to items that valuable through them. He eyed the offer with a worn-out, all-too-familiar look, and a faint, cynical smirk tugged at his lips as he clocked their real motive. It all clicked. Someone wanted him back. These people were the kind to cheer over a worthless ring, proving they didn't know monsters at all, couldn't handle labyrinths, and were probably stuck struggling just to get by. Kanado's quiet deductions got interrupted by a stunned, "What?" and Arga let out a dry laugh, basically asking who in their right mind would tag along with them, then roasting how they circled around to recruit him once they finally clocked his values. His patience finally cracked. "Shut up!" he screamed, and the roar of his voice slammed through the room. His explosive outbursts shut them up. Then everyone's eyes snapped to his crew instead. They recoiled in disgust, barking that the chimera-looking thing was nasty, while the hairy wolf made them flinch too. And, yeah, the slime was the normal one. Somehow. Inside, Arga just smirked. Turns out those fancy high-rank rare drop. Their disgust only fanned his rage, then he vanished from my sight, and a command snapped through the air. His command sent them scrambling back, and the ponytail woman snapped that he was barbaric for going for violence while Kanado spat curses and reluctantly gave in. As they stormed out, Arga clicked his tongue in irritation, fuming over how bad his luck was to cross their path. He watched them walk away, and his face hardened into pure resolve, because living carefree for 3 whole years was suddenly dead to him, and he swore he'd grow strong enough to make his old party never underestimate him again. Meanwhile, Kanado just fell quiet, and the hooded woman snapped with pure irritation, calling Argo nothing but a nuisance, then admitted she'd been itching to recruit him again. But now, that dream was officially dead. Her ponytail companion blurted, "So what do we do now?" The hooded woman finally admitted the labyrinth was going to crush them without someone who actually knows monsters, then swore she'd invent a whole new plan, one that didn't need a tamer at all. With the encounter finally behind him, Arga sprinted through the city streets, barreling toward a local shot. He strode up to the elderly proprietor, slapped down a coin, and asked if the man would take it. Because after so many runs through the labyrinth, his knife had turned dull, and he needed to trade that coin for cash to grab a brand new weapon. He slapped a single coin onto the wooden counter. The shopkeeper leaned in and inspected it edge by edge, then snapped the news to Arga. Bad news. It was a fake. Still, he smirked and offered Arga 1 gold coin to take it off his hands. Arga let out a strained laugh, swearing he'd thought today was his lucky break. Then his first spark of hope faded into a mild letdown as the shopkeeper just watched, clearly getting the joke. He clamps down on the shopkeeper's wrist, and the old man yelps in sharp pain from the sudden, brutal grip. Letting him go, Arga erupts, screaming that the man is a full-on scam dealer and that the coin is real, dropped by an ogre no less. But inside, he's plotting bigger, an apology, 2,000 gold, and the store's priciest knife. Right then, a thug steps in and growls a warning, "Don't you dare stir up trouble." The thug isn't alone, then a squad of menacing figures spills out from the back of the shop, faces set in stone, and Argus' gaze sweeps across them, forging his resolve into something unbreakable. A hulking brute slams forward, cracks his knuckles, and rockets in with a scream. Then Arga realizes he stumbled into a truly disgusting place. The world would be better off without. He sidesteps the clumsy swing like it's nothing, then blasts him with a fierce, lightning-fast hit that launches the big brute tumbling through the air. The last thugs freeze, staring like they've just seen a ghost. One grumbles that he's still deadly, and another blurts his name like he can't believe it's him. Arga snaps his head back, snarling that they should have never picked a fight with him when he's already on edge. That hits him one tired realization. Maybe the real bad luck isn't them, maybe it's him. Right then, a new voice snaps his name right on cue. A young woman stands in the doorway, eyes fixed on him, and the thugs whip around, stunned she showed up. One of them yanks out a blade, pointing it at her as he snarls that she better stay right there or he'll slice her down. She doesn't even flinch at the threater, face stays calm as ever, and she snaps at the man to shut up. She shot forward in a blur, and before anyone could even blink, both thugs were launched into the air crash, skidding across the stone floor, knocked out cold, while Arte could only gape at the sudden, horrifying quiet. He stared up as she spun toward him, flashing a bright, cheerful grin like nothing could touch her, and she casually shrugged off all the violence. Then she blurted that she'd been hunting him everywhere, yelling his name like it was buried in the chaos. Arga coin. His mind reeled, fighting to make sense of the nightmare he'd just almost witnessed. Then, the shopkeeper, eyes wide with terror and shock, finally recognized the young woman, yelled her name like it was a curse, "Sissel!" and Arga snapped into place, realizing exactly who stood in front of him. He locked eyes with her, and the name burned through his mind. Sissel, the strongest human. Frozen in sheer shock, he couldn't move, and she spoke again, asking if he'd be willing to hear her sudden request. She locked eyes with him, her face pure sincerity, and laid her plan out in one breath. She wanted him to team up with her and form a party. That sudden invitation hit him like a punch. Couldn't even tell if this was the luck of a lifetime or the start of something awful, while Sissel across from him just grinned. Sissel begs Arga to team up with her, and it floors him. His thoughts spiral as legends crash into his mind. The Sissel who tore down evil dragons, demon lords, and even gods all by herself. And Arga just can't wrap his head around it. Why would the living legend, humanity's strongest, choose someone like him? Voices of disbelief hit the air as she demands to know what proof she's the real deal, while Sissel stares, stunned by the skepticism, and only manages a shaky, hesitant reply. She panics and blurts that she's the real Sissel, saying her power should be impossible to deny, but then she admits those thugs she just beat were strong enough to prove nothing about who she really is. Still trying to prove she's got what it takes, she flashes a confident wink and blurts out that she's got real proof, because that crooked dealer she just ran into has her on edge. That unveils her prize, the divine bone blade, claiming she's the only one who owns it if caught. She stays completely unmoved, shoots back coldly that if she actually flashes it in the blade, it changes nothing, because he's never seen it before. Sissel's confident grin slips for a second. Realization hits her like a lightning bolt. She gasps, mortified, and blurts that she should have just shown him her adventure card from the start. Then, with a dramatic flourish, she yanks the card out from her cleavage. His grip tightens as the card hits his hands, and his eyes bulge in pure shock when he reads it. He blurts out, "This is insane," because she somehow juggles 3 jobs at once, and the idea feels so bizarre he's left wondering if that third one even counts as real work. The card spills the truth. Sissel Lou Sergil, 18 years old, rank SSS, and it even tags her as a sword saint, holy knight, and dark mage. Her level and power stats sit there like cold numbers, but the real shock hits when Arga swallows his doubt and realizes the card isn't bluffing. She's the real deal. Still, as Sissel thanks him, that first question claws harder in his head. Why does humanity's strongest want to team up with an E-rank and Verkut? She leaned in as Sissel kicked off her explanation, and what came out shocked her. Since she was a kid, she'd always been the strongest. No one could ever match her in a fight. And to her, it wasn't pride at all. It was a tragedy, the kind of pain Argus somehow acted like he admired. Continued, because she reached the peak of strength from the very start. Her life had no goals, no thrills, no spark at all. Sitting alone on a barren mountaintop, she finally admitted she'd been craving a real, gut-wrenching challenge. Hunting that impossible challenge, she tore across the world evil dragons, demon lords, even twisted gods, and every one of them crumbled beneath her. Now, surrounded by the wreckage of her defeated foes, despair hit hard, because the victory she'd forged couldn't find its ending. Despair clung to her until she heard the rumors about him. Then fresh excitement sparked, and she told Arga that his weird power to make monsters stronger through fusion was the exact thing that grabbed her. Arga weighed her words, staring straight at just how twisted her situation really was. He stared back, eyes blazing wide when it hit him, her one-of-a-kind power was the whole reason she hunted him down to Tima. As he devoured her unbelievable story, he snapped that teaming up came with his own terms. Then Sissel, all fired up, promised she'd listen to anything he threw at her. The rules were brutal and unshakable. He demanded, face to face, that she fight him. 1 week later, they dropped into a gigantic circular coliseum, packed wall to wall with screaming spectators, and right then their deal was finally about to get tested. Packed into a roaring coliseum, the crowd buzzes like lightning is about to strike, rumors tearing through the air. One side swearing Sissel is about to duel, the other insisting this is her party's entrance exam. No matter the reason, because the whole arena is crammed here to stare at the spectacle. Right in the middle, Sissel stands stone steady, her eyes gliding over the stands. From his spot in the arena, Marga spots the massive crowd, and a sharp frown twists his face. He realizes, with pure annoyance, that the guys from his shop must have blabbed the news, turning his private challenge into a full-on public spectacle. She shoots him a warm little smile and thinks, no way, he really made it this far. Like her heart can't believe how incredible he is. His thoughts snap back to a promise he swore when he told Sissel that the moment he saw her, he knew she'd grown monstrously strong. His memory won't stop each night. It replays the vow he swore to her, admitting he wasn't worthy as he was, then promising her one thing. In a week, he'd prove he could become the man she deserved. He still remembers how soft her acceptance felt. Sissel just smiled, nodded, and promised she'd see what he was made of, and he answered back with one steady, determined yes. The memory slips away, snapping him back to the present. Then, across the dusty arena, Sissel unsheathes her katana, the polished blade flashing as she plants her feet, grips tight, and flashes a confident grin. A brutal pressure pours off her like a storm, and even he has to admit, he doesn't stand a chance. Still, his face turns ice cold with resolve, because backing down isn't an option anymore. Sissel just keeps staring, smile locked in place, eyes razor sharp on her opponent. As the duel finally kicked off, whispers tore through the crowd. Namaras, the guildmaster, clocked the young man staring down Sissel and realized it was Arga. Looking different than before, yet he still brushed him off as Kanado's old lackey. Their words slammed into Arga's ears, and boom, his worst fear was real. Even if he teamed up with Sissel, the crowd would still sneer and label him as Sissel's not good enough sidekick, like that's all he'll ever be. He hardened his expression, and fresh resolve slammed into him. He wasn't running from this judgment anymore. He'd meet it head on, and he'd prove himself to everyone. With that thought, he exploded forward in a blur, leaving the crowd staring and gasping because the second they watched, they knew it. Arga had changed. She launched a savage storm of punches and kicks, the air snapping with power around Sissel, and she just stood there, unshaken, totally unbothered. She felt like an unstoppable wall of stone, and that brutal gap in power slammed into Arga like a wrecking ball after a whole week of fusing monsters, stacking up 100+ levels and unlocking fresh skills. He still couldn't spot a single opening to win. Her voice sliced right through his panic. Sissel praised him and said his performance was amazing, like he could actually keep up with her. Then she dropped the real gut punch. The strength he had right now matched hers when she was only 2 years old. The crowd didn't see what he saw. They erupted in cheers, stunned that Arga was trading blows with Sissel on equal ground, just like that same legendary warrior who was said to crush evil gods in the blink of an eye. He freezes for a split second in pure shock, then surges a head dagger held low ready to slam the attack into Sissel. As he rushes closer, a bleak thought hits him hard. His black dragon weapon, a bargain from some shady merchant, stands zero chance against a sword forged from the very bone of an evil god. Sissel studies his approach with eerie calm, saying she figured he'd pull something fresh, then tells him, "I won't use monsters this time. Explaining what happens if they get killed would be a nightmare, and finishes with, "So I won't kill you either." Then she drops a chilling warning with a faint smile. Accidents can happen. In that blink, Argus unleashed control over monsters: a wolf, a slime, and a tiny chimera dragon spawning right behind Sissel, ready to strike. He jerks back, jabs an accusing finger at her, and blasts that she's cheating, then reminds her she just swore she wouldn't use monsters. His outburst comes out like a flare inside. He's already nodding to his plan. Those monsters are just decoys. If he strikes from behind while she's still thrown off, even humanity's strongest won't walk away unscathed. But her instincts scream that his plan is crystal clear. She doesn't even fully turn, and Sissel just says, calmly, "That was a good idea." Arga's eyes flare with terror as her blade snaps up. Cold steel pressed straight to his throat. A massive shockwave tore through the air, blasting his three monsters, the chimera, the wolf, and the slime, backward until they crashed out cold in an instant, like the world hit pause. He gawked in disbelief, like his brain couldn't accept what he just saw. How in the world could all three get blasted away at once? He watched them twitch and stir. They weren't dead. A spark of hope erupted in his chest. He turned to his companions and blurted an apology for dragging them into his escape, because he finally saw it. Their sacrifice carved the opening he needed to close the gap. His lunch was met by nothing but empty air because a calm voice snapped from right behind him, declaring his defeat. Sissel told him it was only an after-image, the kind you leave when you move at insane speed. Then she casually explained how she crushed his monsters, just like she dealt with those thugs before. One simple finger flick. Stunned into total silence, Arga finally gave anicaps. He snapped his gaze upward, sweat pouring down his brow, eyes wide with pure terror and stunned disbelief as her overwhelming power crashed down on him. On the sidelines, the crowd erupted into applause, and Namaris the Guildmaster bellowed his praise, calling it a great match and admitting he'd earned a whole new respect for Tamers. Cecil dropped her blade, asked if he was satisfied, then offered him, formally, to be her companion. Arga, still reeling from his defeat, nodded on the spot, and then it hit him hard. With her walking beside him, the mocking would stop. 2 days slammed by, and then their brand new journey kicked off right at the towering entrance to the A-rank Kikip Labyrinthan, endless chasm carved into a mountain's side. Now that they've become companions, Arga blurts out a rule. He admits Sissel's power is real, but he wants to see her battle monsters for real, in full combat, and Sissel just nods, calmly agreeing. She asks if he truly wants to see her fight, and he just stares down at the monsters, already wiped out, sweaty, shaken, and asks if she can pull off that same move again, admitting that even while he watched, he still couldn't wrap his head around what just happened. Sissel tells them, "If you want to see what I'm really capable of, we've got to hit an S-rank labyrinth. Anything lower gets crushed in an instant." Then Arga slams the brakes, saying, "I can't. E-rank rules won't let me step into an S-rank dungeon." Sissel doesn't flinch at all. She just grins and declares, "Then we go take the test." Her eyes flare bright with cheerful determination as the promotion exam looms ahead. She tells him straight up that to step into the S-rank labyrinths, he has to earn that S-rank first. Then she beams and volunteers to back his exam, even hyping him to go for SSS, but Arga just stares, swallowed in doubt, wondering if he can really pull it off. The whole weight of this moment slams into him. He finally builds a party, and before he can even breathe, fate hurls him straight into the highest rank imaginable, leaving his face twisted and raw, full-on panic at the monster of a road he's just been forced to take. At the base of a towering, twisted tree sprouting from an ancient stone tower, Kanedo's crew braces to step into an SS-rank labyrinth. Ponytail woman's nerves are sky-high, but the hooded woman just smiles and promises their plan will carry them through. Kanado says they can smash through even without Arga, and his face hardens into pure, grim determination, no Tamer at all. And they're still going to do it. The woman smirks and nods like she means it, brushing Arga off as a total loser. Then she declares they'll crush the labyrinth at last and earn their way into an SS ring. Across town, a mustache man corners Arga and demands to know if he's heard the bombshell about Kanado's party, while Guildmaster Namera and a healer in uniform with a medical bag linger nearby, all ears. He tilted his head and said it like a crack in the armor. Kanado's crew has clearly started pulling chicken tactics. Mustache man demands answers. and Nimmers lays it out. This poison rush plan skips the weaker monsters and charges straight for the boss. But that's exactly the kind of blunder people make when they don't get how important knowledge is, and they shrug off Tamers. The mustache man scoffs at their ignorance and snaps that if you're even a decent adventurer, you'd instantly see how priceless the Tamer's information really is. Suddenly, a sharp sound rips through the nearby staircase, and Nimra and the young healer both snap their heads that way, curiosity flaring as they lean over the stairwell. She and that healer girl were marched into a huge, empty stone chamber where only one doorway sat on the far wall, and a tiny arched passage hinted at a staircase plunging down into pitch-black darkness. Nimmer finally steps out, breathless, and tosses out a full apology for the delay. Arga called his name, and Nimera stepped in, sizing up the young adventurer with a sharp smile. Steward Darga's SS rank, and admitted he finally got it. That's why he decided to take on a monster like that, right at the high end of the average. He kept talking, telling me Sissel had filled him in on their plan to team up and form a party. A brutal, commanding voice snapped in from the side, cutting him off, mid-sentence, thick-armed, and built like a weapon. Them to shut down the pointless chatter so they could get started. That sudden move snapped Arga's attention with a sharp glare, but Nimera didn't blink. She just turned to him and offered to introduce them. He gestured to the hulking fighter, announcing Raja an SS rank adventurer, and then made it crystal clear Raja was the examiner for Argus's promotion tasks. The young adventurer's eyes narrowed, and recognition flickered across his face. He straight up asked Raja if they'd met before. Raja waved it off, saying Arga probably ran into his brother, Rajal. Suddenly it clicked. Raja's brother, Razal, had started a brawl with him at the guild, so he blurted it out, and the examiner just stared back, face impossible to read. Tears ripped down Roger's face. As his composure collapsed, he accused Arga of beating his brother so badly that Razal sank into a depressed shunt. That sudden tension hit so hard that Nimera snapped, wondering how fast everything had gone sour, and Arga stayed cool, telling her he was sorry, but Razal started it and got what he deserved, until the nearby healer lost it, shrieking that she'd kill him. Between them, Nimmer stepped in and demanded they face off, then declared he was about to lay out the test rules. He laid down the rules. Argo only got through if he fought his way to a draw or stole something more. Without any fancy cue, Roger screamed and charged forward, smashing a massive practice sword down with brutal, bone-jarring force. A sudden attack blindsided Argo, and when the healer gasped in panic, Raja flashed a wild grin, screaming that the very first hit would crown the winner, and swore he'd kill Argo on the spot. His blade slammed into the floor, and just like that, Arga had already vanished out of the swing, tumbling backward to carve out distance, landing light on his feet as he snapped his gaze back on his opponent, who just stood there with a smug, confident smirk. He hammers forward, lashing out with his huge practice sword like a wild blade, baiting Argat to the edge. Come on, what's wrong? And each swing forces Argat to parry and stumble back, while the young healer stares, tense and worried. As the one-sided beating keeps raining down, the healer girl snaps around in total panic, begging them to step in right now. She swears Roger was cheating from the very start of the match. Sissel, but she stays stone calm. Shiri flashes a confident smile at her companion, telling her, "Don't worry, this fight is going to be over in no time." Back in the arena, Raja keeps smashing into Argus's defenses, punch after punch, grinning like he already knows the fight won't last much longer. His confidence snaps into a wild, manic frenzy. He cackles and then roars, swinging even harder than before. And right as the chaos hits, Argus's face changes as the truth finally clicks into place. Right there, everything snaps into a new rhythm. Roger swings wild, and the hit just sails past, knocking him off balance for a heartbeat. Sweat streams down his face, surprise twisting his features, while Arga, somehow completely unshaken, just stands there, cool and laser-focused. Arga bursts out of the gate like a flash of lightning, then drives one razor-precise punch straight into Raja's midsection, boom, sending him screaming across the arena as his sword tumbles away and he crashes into the stone wall. He crumpled against the wrecked wall, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth as shock and pure agony twisted his face. He crumpled on the ground, totally beaten, while the healer girl stared with her mouth hanging open, scrambling to understand how it all went wrong. Arga loomed over his opponent, baffled because after that surprise hit, Raja absolutely should have had the upper hand. With a faint, knowing smile, he admitted he'd expected a dirty brawl, and that's why he'd been on guard from the very start. Namera stared at what was happening and snapped out that Arga looked shocked. Even after that first strike, Arga admitted his jaw-dropping surprise wasn't the attack at all. It was how painfully slow Raj moved, and that single remark lit the defeated man on the floor up with pure rage. A sudden thought hit him. What if Raja had been quietly dragging out his pace on purpose, trying to bait him into thinking everything was safe? He suddenly remembered the same kind of thought about Roger's brother. Then the connection hit so hard he froze, sweat beading on his brow. He snapped the idea shut fast, certain the slowness wasn't a mere disguise at all then, just to be safe. He even pretended to stumble mid-fight, daring his opponent to show his tells. Still catching her breath after the fight, the healer girl demanded answers. Why keep dodging forever if he just wanted to land a non-lethal hit? Arga finally snapped it into focus. His real goal was to beat Raja without handing him any serious injuries. Namera cuts in with the plain truth. Arga held back because Namera's orders told him to. He relives that old talk the moment he grabbed Arga's younger shoulders, begged him to rein in his impulses, and swore it would start from that day forward. The memory shatters into the present Namera studies. Argo with a quiet, proud smile, saying he's grown so much. Argo holds her gaze steady and nods like, yeah, I really kept my restraint when it mattered. With that confirmation, Namera plants a hand on his shoulder and declares, dead certain, that Arga passed the test. His voice booms with official power as he finally stamps Argo Billion as an SS rank adventurer. And just like that, the proof hits you in the face, an all-new adventure card, shining bright with the triple S insignia stamped across it. As Sissel reunites with her crew, she grins and says she knew he'd breeze through it, and the healer girl can barely contain her excitement. She blurts out, so what's next? Then reminds him that with his fresh rank, he can waltz into any labyrinth he wants. He weighs her question, and you can tell, when there are so many options, picking one feels brutal. He even proposes they throw a promotion party first, so they can think it through. But the moment he starts talking, a razor-sharp voice rips through the crowd and screams his name. Razel and his brother, Raja, called in while both of them were down on their hands and knees on the stone street, heads pressed low, swearing themselves to him with pure, crushing submission. He just stood there, completely stunned, as two insanely powerful adventurers bowed right in front of him, eyes going wide. Then his gaze snapped away and one shocked thought slipped out of his mouth. You guys. It was Kanado and his companion, faces streaked with dirt, eyes full of panic. Kanado's voice tore through the air as he screamed, "Help us! Argo!" A few hours back, inside a crumbling ruin strangled by roots, the air felt stone-still with centuries of silence. Ducking past those same ruined walls, Kanado, Sans, and Retone bolted into a desperate sprint down a stone corridor while an unstoppable force thundered after them. The light died instantly when a massive stone pillar slammed down from the ceiling, shattered the floor, and blocked their escape with a thunderous roar. That crushing power from their foe slammed the brakes on everything. Retone even called it. This was as far as they could go. Sans tried to fire up that defeated Kanado, dragging him back to his dream of becoming an SS rank adventurer. But the only truth he could choke out was brutal. Their enemy was just too strong. Ahead of them, a wall of brutal darkness yawned, and then two blazing white eyes and a crooked, menacing grin tore through it, revealing the only part of the monster that had trapped them. With that terrifying presence pressing in, Sans panicked and shoved the idea of retreating as he gripped the returned stone, but he cursed that there was nowhere to use it. Right in that split-second stall, Retone got smashed with brutal force and blasted through the air, her body hanging lifeless. She crashed to the ground, and Sans screamed her name, wondering what Kanata was even thinking. Kanata didn't slow down. He shut everyone out and said this was their one shot at activating a return stone. He snapped back that Riton would understand, since her evasion and defense magic would hold, and they could always come back for her later. Activated the stone, then teleportation's light swallowed him whole, and as he vanished mid-flare, Riton watched from the ground, her face locked in sheer horror and disbelief at being left behind. Later on, back in the city, the rooftops sat eerily still beneath a crystal-clear sky. Right here, Arga stormed up to Kanado and Sans. arms locked across his chest as he accused them straight-faced of ditching Raton and bailing. Kanado snapped back that they were heading back to help, but Sans instantly cut him off, calling that help just a selfish dodge. Then he begged Arga to jump in and save their trapped teammate. He smirked out at Kanado, basically asking, "Why are you leaning on me after you kicked me out?" Then he hit them with the truth. With the Tamer's knowledge, Kanado ought to know exactly how to smash that monster, and with a sarcastic grin, he asked if they'd undo his banishment if they'd just reaccrue him as Sun stared down at the floor, meekly swallowed her pride, begged him for help, and insisted she was just thinking about what she'd done, while Arga just scoffed at her so-called remorse in his own head. Then he admitted he'd thought about helping, but fate shut the door hard because, as an E-rank adventurer, he was barred from stepping into any S-rank labyrinth. His words hit like a hammer. Sons remembered the rule, and they couldn't just say, "Keep going." Rage burned in them, because their bowing and pleading felt completely wasted. Then Argus flashed a wide grin, lifting his adventure card. When it hit him hard, he'd just been promoted, and he totally forgot. His old teammates gawked in disbelief. SSS rank for Kanado? And when the shock hit, they demanded to know if the card was forged, only to snap back the second the truth landed and apologize like crazy. With that new rank in hand, he finally understood that Arga could get into the laboratory. He blasts out a shout, trying to yank their attention back, while Sissel, posted beside Arga, shoots Kanado and Sans a dismissive look and snarls that Arga must be joking if those trash are really his companions, and Arga just grins, admitting he's shocked it's even true. His expression hardens the second he makes his bold declaration. He will go and savor the tone. He says he'll hand Raton it at the guild the moment she's safe, but flatly shuts down his old party and snaps that he doesn't need their help. It'll only get in the way. Ken Otto then yells his name in furious disbelief. He brushes off the outburst, then turns to his new partner and declares that he and Sissel are taking down the labyrinth together. 3 words that slam the room silent. Kanado and Sans freeze when they hear it, realizing Arga is the guy, the world's strongest, with Sissel at his side. And Kanado blurts in pure disbelief, asking how someone at Arga's level could possibly team up with her. Sans quickly calls out that, weird as it is, this twist actually lands in their favor, and Kanado immediately jumps on her side. At the twisted tree-like gates of the Exalt Labyrinth, Sissel grabs a quick moment to fuse her monsters before they move on, and Arga immediately snaps. "So why are you helping me?" She whips around with her arms spread wide and tells him point blank he owes nothing to his old party because those guys are selfish, scum, no guilt, no remorse, not a shred. Kanado snorts nearby, shrugging off her tone like he's probably dead already, and Sissel just listens as Arga flashes that quiet, cocky smile. "Demim, demutney, to He snapped with ice-cold certainty that he'd wipe out the opponent his old comrades couldn't even land a hit on because the guy they used to laugh at, he was the one who'd win. He kicked off the whole process, slamming his finger onto the command to fuse, and that sharp glint in his eyes made it clear he wasn't trying to help them. He wanted every last one of them to choke on bitterness. Sissel fired off the question. Was this one move really revenge? Arga only smirked and said it was nowhere near the end. Dim. The light surged brighter and brighter, washing them in pure glow. Sissel stared, awestruck, while Arga snapped that this radiance was proof of evolution. From the light, a terrifying creature burst forth, leaving Sissel gasping for air. She stared in awe, swearing she'd never seen anything like it before, while a sly smirk tugged at Argus's lips as he couldn't wait to see what happened next. The brand-new beast wasted 0 time, showing off it lunged straight ahead and ripped a giant beetle monster to shreds, the one guarding the labyrinth's entrance. Once the path was cleared, they pushed into the dungeon. Sissel snapped that Kanado's crew was way too weak. Their careful, timid tactics wouldn't survive a labyrinth like this, not even if it hadn't hit SS rank yet, and Arga brushed off the whole opening area as painfully underwhelming. He strode alongside his unstoppable creation, smirking at how his old party used to do things, and he couldn't stand the idea of winning with that flawed chicken tactics. It felt downright stupid to him. He shuts down the thought of skipping straight to poison the boss because status ailment immunity would laugh it off, Yet the whole situation still gnaws at him. Ancestral finally spills the truth. The labyrinth's boss is a vampire, and that twist makes Kanedo's story feel wildly off. He admits this was exactly what had been worrying him too. His eyes narrowed in disbelief as he locked onto the wildest detail of all their escape was even possible at all. Sissel leans in and lays it out. Vampires aren't just monsters. They're proud, and they hate losing their prey. And she insists the boss should have used magic to mess with their return stones. He argues that even if you toss a sacrifice at a vampire, it wouldn't just shrug off 2 more victims, so he's sure the thing intentionally let them walk away. After that deduction, Sissel drops a brand new theory. What if the vampire is actually immune? They're right in front of those hulking doors to the boss chamber, and the artist's like, picture a vampire princess or a full-on vampire noble. Cecile buys it, instantly saying that kind of monster would be SSS rank, way beyond even an SSS vampire, stronger and far more noble. She admits that rank upgrades like this can happen. But Arga's not buying it for a second. He's sure a higher-born vampire would be even tougher and would never let anyone slip away. Right as he tried to finish his sentence, a blade screamed past and slammed through his ear, lining up straight for his head. He threw himself back at the last second. Wham! His sword bit into the stone with a brutal clang, stopping inches from his face. From the shadows, he clocked the weapon in an instant. A bloodsword. And then a chuckling voice broke out, grinning that he dodged the strike. The moment she stepped into the light, a sharp-eared young woman in a regal dark dress owned the room. She smiled, like she'd already won, declared herself Reina Lararalicia, the great vampire princess, and even dared them to be proud for surviving her first attack. His worst fears slammed into place right in front of him. They weren't dealing with some random monster at all. It was a vampire princess, a mutant variant, and things were about to get brutally dangerous. As soon as she heard it, Sissel snapped her gaze to her companion, still calm, still locked in, and told him she'd leave that opponent to him. As Argo got ready to swing into battle, the floor started to ripple. Liquid gathered and hardened into the silhouette of a monster, and Sissel's eyes widened the second she saw it. When the vampire princesses throw down their challenge, Arga finishes his summoning, and right in front of him, 2 massive monsters smash into existence, a hulking, shaggy beast with a wolf's head and fangs bared, plus a towering serpent crowned with a horned, grinning skull, and Arga just stands there calmly behind his new guardians. A vampire princess leans in to watch the display, a sly smirk tugging at her lips. She calls him a tamer, but her confidence wobbles just a bit. At first, she dismisses the idea that simple monsters could ever touch her, yet as she takes in what she's seeing, a thread of worry creeps in. Reina, the vampire princess, stands tall in front of the colossal skull serpent, smirking like she owns the night, while Argo hovers nearby, calm as ice, silently sizing up the monsters about to collide. It snaps into focus. She's the vampire princess, Reina, and suddenly everything clicks. If she's truly SSS rank, then Kanado and the others getting crushed makes total sense. Reina looks at him and says she'll remember his name. He can't take his eyes off her as he swears his solemn vow she's the very first SSS rank monster he'll ever kill, and because of that, he'll never forget her. A flash of shock hits her face for a split second. Then she smiles and introduces herself, telling him to remember the name of the one who's going to kill him, Arga. Her calm shatters into raw fury, and her eyes narrow as she snarls like, how dare he look down on her? With a furious scream, you insolent fool, Reina surges forward, her clawed hand cocked to bring him crashing down. When the attack hits, Argo snaps his arm up, points like a commander, and bellows for his crew. Lala! Lily! Go! And they spring into action. The horned wolf monster, Lily, slams into the vampire princess's charge and swipes her down with a giant, clawed paw, roaring like it means to tear her apart. That vampire princess's thunderous kick doesn't land on who she aimed for. It smashes straight into Lily, the horned wolf monster, and the clash erupts in a sharp burst of raw energy between them, and the wolf slams backward from the impact, skidding hard while the colossal skull serpent surges in, its bony jaws ripped wide open to strike. She clicks her tongue in pure frustration, the non-stop interference driving her up the wall, and with a furious shout to clear the way, Reyna launches a volley of dark, razor-piercing shots straight at the serpent. Projectiles battered the skull serpent's head, each hit detonating into tiny, sharp bursts across its bony hide. She uses the massive creature's head like a stepping stone, then rockets off, it kicking free with insane speed and smashing right back into the fight. She rockets through the sky, dodging every monstrous obstacle like they don't even exist, and with a smug grin, her eyes lock on Arga as she charges straight toward him. As she closes in, Arga's face stays stone still, while Reyna snarls through clenched teeth, screaming that he'll die and regret it. Her attack comes crashing down, but Arga snatches her wrist with effortless ease, and the vampire princess freezes in wide-eyed terror as her strike gets shut down before it can land. He calmly sized up the threat, knowing that an SS rank vampire wasn't just strong, it was terrifying, and he'd already supercharged his monsters, Lala and Lily, to take on SS rank labyrinths. But this fight was way harder than he ever expected. Rage surged through her as the truth hit. She realized he was trying to size up her strength with his monsters, and she snapped that this whole fight was nothing but a live test to see what they could do now. He hissed a curse under his breath, clamping down with iron control, fury burning at her reckless nerve while she strained and fought back, screaming at him to let go. She couldn't believe her eyes. She glared at him with wide, furious sockets, snarling questions about who he was, like she needed to know if he was even human at all. He didn't bother answering. He launched straight into action and, with one explosive kick, smashed her right in the midsection. The impact slammed her backward, and a sharp gasp tore out of her as pain lit up her body. Pinned to the ground in shock, she watched as he stayed cool, praising her as the toughest opponent he'd ever faced then, slamming in one last, brutal line. She still wasn't as strong as Sissel. The comparison sent her sputtering blood, her eyes blazing with pure rage. Then, before she could even blink, he vanished into the space between them and drove one crushing blow into the back of her neck, dropping her cold into unconsciousness. She watched the fallen princess grit her teeth and refuse to give up dark, long nails, clenching the hilt on her ruined weapon, as a magical sigil ignited and flared to life around her. She lunged in, shrieking that he was a bastard, but he stayed cool, meeting her rush head-on and snapping her away with a small blade, then dryly told her she was getting carried away. His quick parry cracked the magically charged weapon like glass shards blasted through the air, and Reyna could only stare in pure shock as her blade crumbled and disintegrated right in front of her. Before she even had time to breathe, dark shadow tendrils burst from the ground and snapped around her arms and torso like a steel trap. The tendrils tightened and trapped her in place, hanging her there, powerless, while Arga watched from far away. Straining against her ropes, she shot him a venomous glare, screaming curses as rage swallowed her, swearing she'd never forgive Arga and that her deadliest magic would rip him apart. Her threat wasn't a joke. Dread crawled off her in waves, and with a flick of her power, dozens of glowing magical circles erupted in the air, each one firing a deadly dark arrow. Arrow after arrow rips into the air like a lethal storm, and the vampire princess doesn't even blink. She declares with total certainty that nobody has ever lived through this attack. Her eyes flare with wild excitement as she squares up to Arga, and Arga just stares back, unbothered, icy, and unsettling. She lets out a savage, triumphant scream and snarls for him to die. In response, a blizzard of magical arrows and spears erupts forward, deadly projectiles, screaming straight for him. While the attack hammers in, Arga doesn't even blink. Reyna gasps in pure disbelief, and Arga just calls out, "Lala!" At his word, a colossal horned serpent skull bursts from the shadows in front of him, Ma's gaping wise. The skeletal beast blasts out a brutal storm of energy, an ugly swirling vortex of power crashing straight into the magic barrage head-on. Two forces slam into each other with earth-shaking force, and that breath attack swallows the whole storm of incoming projectiles. Reyna's so-called unkillable attack gets obliterated. Its projectiles vanish into nothing as a blazing blast tears through everything. He gapes as the last of his power unravels into thin air, and right in front of him, Reyna slumps in the wreckage, shaking hard, unable to even speak. He calmly tells her, "Your savage magic could have wrecked anyone else, but it won't touch the Tamer." With a hard, final glare, he calls the fight over and walks away like she's already history so. Reina scrambles to beg him, then falls quiet and gives up. And that sudden surrender slams into him like a sucker punch. Her composure snaps like glass tears pour down her face as she sobs and screams for her life, begging and repeating her surrender again and again. From the sidelines, Sizzle's mouth falls open. He can't believe it because Reina is done for. The vampire princess keeps breaking down, sobbing and begging for forgiveness, while Arga, stunned beyond words, just freezes there, staring in pure shock. This rare sight hits like a punch watching a proud vampire princess sob and plead for her life while Arga stares down at weeping Reina, then asks himself what the hell he's supposed to do next. Reina straightened up and called him Arga-sama, right to his face, then blurted out that she had a request. So Sissel's eyes immediately flared with excitement, pushing him to hear the rare plea of a vampire princess. Tears burned in her eyes as Reina finally looked up at him and begged him to use his power only. It didn't make sense, because the moment he heard her plea, his confusion exploded, and he admitted she was acting so completely unsettling he couldn't even figure out what she wanted. He stood there, waiting for her request. But when the defeated vampire princess finally spoke, it hit him like a punch, tears pouring down her face. Reina looked up in pure desperation and begged him to kill her father. Her request left him completely stunned. Arga just stared back, brain scrambling to even understand her command, managing only one shaky, confused question. Next to him, Sissel's eyes went wide with the same stunned shock, because this turn came out of nowhere. Inside the wrecked chamber, Arga Abelian weighs the vampire princess's demand, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Kill your father." Reina starts talking, saying the whole incident happened about a month ago, and Arga leans in hard, because for a proud vampire princess to ask for patricide, something wild must be going on. He thanks her for trusting him, and urges her to spill every detail. It counts how 3 mysterious, robed clergy suddenly materialized in the room she shared with her father, and at that moment he felt safe, sure he could just swat the intruders away, like he always did. But her father's assessment was dead. Wrong. Those clergy members, especially the one with the sinister grin, were insanely strong. She tore into her father in a blink, jabbed an unknown serum into his neck with a syringe, and then disappeared. No trail, no answers. Ever since that day, her father's mind kept cracking, his body contorting and wasting away until he finally turned into a mindless, roaring monster. Tears streamed down Reina's face as the memory crushed her, and she finally admitted she can't stand seeing him like this, her voice cracking as she swears the only way to set him free is to kill him. With tears streaking down Reina's face, Sissel finally snaps into action. She admits her power alone can't beat Reina's father, and that she'd been waiting for the one person who could. Then her eyes lock onto Arga, and she demands, "So tell me, Arga Coin, what are you going to do?" He stared at the vampire princess as her tears turned into grim resolve, and that look sealed his decision. He was going to do it. Reina practically burst with joy and thanked him again and again. Then he made it clear this choice wasn't just mercy, he was curious too. And if they wanted to beat the labyrinth, they had to face their father first. Then his mind snapped back to the exact drug the clergy had used, and Reina couldn't shake her unease, because everyone knew they worshipped holy magic and looked down on medicine. He agreed to her request on the spot, then slammed in one. Reina's eyes sharpened as she swore she was ready for whatever came next. She pushed for answers, demanding to know what he meant to put her through. Then boom, her confidence crumbled into pure flustered embarrassment when she totally misread him, and she shyly begged him to be gentle, insisting it was her very first time. He got stunned and reeled back, yelling that he never said that, then scrambled to explain that the price meant her becoming his companion only, for his mess of words to make Reina snap and brand him a pervert. Her cheeks burned hot red the second her imagination sprinted straight to marriage, and when Arga, fuming with exasperation, kicked back, she snapped, yelling at her to explain why her mind would jump to that conclusion so fast. Finally, he tore off the mask and admitted the truth. He didn't fully trust her, so he'd tame her and lock her under his control, and if she pulled any weird stunt, he'd bury her away in the shadows. She listens, then with a little blush, she starts spinning Reina's condition into something bigger, marriage-ish, if she proves she's trustworthy. And before he can hesitate, she taps her foot and impatiently demands he just lead her straight to her father. Sissel followed Reina's lead as the whole crew dropped down the stone staircase, twisting lower and lower, and Sissel couldn't help but ask if Reina's father really was down there. Reina nodded and said, "Yep," because her dad had developed this weird obsession with living underground. As they push deeper, Argo squints at the dim, cavernous air and mutters that it screams vampire lair, while Sissel spots more passages branching off into the darkness. Her sharp observation makes Cecil lean in and ask Reina straight up if she's run into a crew of 3 adventurers lately, 1 guy and 2 women, the kind who look totally clueless. Reina immediately shuts it down. No, she hasn't. He instantly clocks that she's talking about Kanedo's party, and memories hit hard those chicken-hearted backroot tactics that must have funneled them straight here. And then the dread lands in his head. They ran into Rainan's father, and with Ritone left behind, he's probably stumbled into something horrifying. Just as his mind starts racing, they hit the edge of a massive, dead empty cavern, so thick with an unseen presence that the air feels like it's pressing on his chest. A brutal stench hits them like a punch. Sissel jerks back, gagging, and Reina's face turns grim as she jabs her finger into the dark, confirming her father is right here. A monstrous clawed hand slams into the stone with a thunderous crack, shattering the ground like glass. He's finally standing, fully exposed, this grotesque monster with massive arms drooping off a bony, wasted torso, while steaming heat billows from his body as he scans the empty, ruined land. The creature rips into another monster's carcass, snarling with nothing but raw, mindless hunger. Then Arga stares in horror and yells for Lulu, his little companion, to come out. The tiny slime monster hops forward, and Arga blurts out his desperate plan. Lulu may not be top tier, but she can detoxify, and he's going to use that last shot power to save Reina's father. Just as the slime is about to strike, it suddenly bursts into glowing light. Argus freezes, stunned, and wonders why right now. And then it hits him, the sign of evolution. The little creature's light surges higher and higher, then blasts into a blinding flash, swallowing the whole area in pure brilliance. As the last glow fades, the evolution finally locks in, and in the slime's place there's a fresh form, a quivering, jet-black mass with 2 huge, unblinking white eyes staring back. Arga just stared at the brand-new creature he'd never seen before, then dug into some kind of analysis and burst out that its stats had jumped hard, plus it had evolved into a species called a shaga, a name he'd never even heard. He rips his gaze off the data, fury and dread twisting across his face as he drops the last bombshell. This creature's a full-on evil god. Cecil's face hardens as she relives a past hitback when she crushed an evil god. One of its abominable lieutenants was a Shoggoth, a beast cut from the same terrifying cloth. Then her mind snaps back to the newly evolved slime, because everyone knows evil god monsters can unleash mental contamination strong enough to drive people completely insane. Sissel snaps the puzzle into place and blurts out she knows that smell, because the drug pumped into Reina's father is the same evil god kind. Arga's eyes widen. He mutters madness, confusion, and the moment it hits him, he realizes this could be exactly why everything's falling apart. Sissel keeps talking, pushing her theory out loud. Maybe the drifting evil god's presence and that awful smell trailing from Reina's father lit the spark that drove Lulu's evolution. Even if she can't say for sure it was the exact cause, Arga suddenly realizes the clergy who dosed her father weren't real holy figures at all, and right beside him. A distraught Reina can only gasp and ask who would ever commit something this cruel. He whips around to Reina and demands the final go-ahead. Are they really sure they can end him? At that exact moment, the vampire monster clocks them, and Fangsbaird bares his fangs with pure, grim resolve. Reina nods her consent is clear. Yes. Once she gives the green light, Argus bursts out that he's ready right, as the beast rockets at him, roaring like it wants his soul. He bursts forward to slam into the attack, mind locked on one thing: split that monster in half and cut off its head. Because even a vampire noble's terrifying regeneration can't survive a blow like that. He surged forward, Then something yanked him up short, and his eyes snapped wide as the truth hit him, and he started to question what he was even seeing. Before he could even wrap his mind around it, the monstrous vampire slammed a gigantic fist straight at him. The blast slammed him hard across the cavern floor, and Reyna snapped his name out, in panic stunned by what just happened. Then blurted that his reaction had been late, even though it shouldn't have been. Unbothered, the beast ripped through the air with a guttural roar, its massive body blasting pure power. As the beast roared, Reyna snapped at Arga to carve out an opening and keep his distance. Then Arga hauled himself up, snatched a little round object off the ground, and followed her plan. The creature snapped forward again, its monstrous face twisting into a vicious snarl. He snapped his arm forward and hurled the object, then it exploded in a blinding flash right in the vampire's face. He stared at the wreckage, stunned that even a full blinding strike barely even bothered it. It hit him all he needed was a little time? That crazy flash? He growls out an order to his slime, Lulu, unleash the chaos, and she snaps to attention, blasting forward pulsating energy rings. The energy rings slam into the monstrous vampire's back, and the impact zaps the air with raw, crackling force. He and Reyna stare in, grimly locked in, their faces split between razor-focused determination and anxious hope, waiting for what comes next. The moment it hits, the vampires snap into agony, faces twisting, eyes going wild and mismatched as their minds get thrown into total chaos. It snaps its head back and screams pure, guttural agony, while its huge hands rake at its own skull, shredding it in torment. The creature writhes in agony, thrashing its cursed sins, and shockwaves slam into the ground, cracking and splintering right at Argus's feet. Relief hits him like a wave the moment he sees it worked, and he mutters to himself with a faint, exhausted smile, tugging at his lips. The immediate threat finally fades, then Reyna strides in, grabs Arga's attention, and asks what happened, because he's clearly zoned out. She admits she ran into someone nasty and it wrecked her focus too. Arga finally tells her the truth, that presence has always been awful, and even like this, it's still dragging him under. His slime's power finally hit, and the monstrous vampire started thrashing on the ground like a trapped beast, while his mind shattered into total dizzying confusion. He stared at the creature, and suddenly the clues snapped into place. Vampires weren't the ones who petrified people. That was never their power. The whole weird look had thrown him off, but then he wondered if this could be Ritone, the one Kanado abandoned. Maybe her powers had finally kicked in, twisted and awakened by the evil god's influence. Then his eyes snapped to Reyna. He apologized for the delay and promised he'd shut this confrontation down fast. But his words gave her zero comfort. Reyna's tears poured as she watched her father claw at himself, trapped in the cruel torment that swallowed his mind. Her crushing sorrow didn't slip past him. His eyes narrowed the instant he saw how badly she was hurting. She looked up, voice shaking as she begged him to make Lulu call off the chaos, because even if the creature had lost its mind, it was still her companion's father. Tamai, in reply, he got every bit of her wish, pulled out a razor-thin blade, and swore that when it came to the man's last moments, he'd fight like a hero with dignity. In a jagged cavern, Arga dug in, dagger up and ready, while Reyna's transformation lit the air and her father charged at him with pure feral rage. Reyna stood back, watching in deadly silence as the fight erupted. The charging beast bellows, its face twisted into pure rage. Then he locks eyes with it, teeth set in steel, swearing that this time the result won't end the same. The creature lunges in and whips a massive fist at him. Arga throws his forearm up to block it, and the hit blasts out a shockwave as he digs in and refuses to move. Their hands crash together in a brutal struggle, massive, clawed monsters yanking at Argus's relentless grip, claws straining to break him. The beast roars again and smashes forward with pure, crushing force, so he clenches his teeth and strains with everything he's got to survive the creature's raw power. With sheer grit, Arga shoves forward, cracking the monster's advantage, and blasts it flying backward through the air. The creature crashes to the ground, staring straight at its own hand, so Reyna, from where she's standing, chokes on a horrified gasp, while Argus's one eye snaps wide, dawning realization hitting him like a punch. He freezes, locked on the same nightmare-thick black slime oozing from the creature's skin and dripping off its fingertips as the transformed vampire stares at his own corrupted flesh. a tiny flicker of awareness sparking in his empty eyes. Garga studies his opponent, then realizes the wound he landed should have been eating away by now, but the creature's region is just unreal. His jaw tightens as the truth hits. Dalbahaum just head clean off. Ardo watches from afar as the monstrous vampire flexes that massive arm, muscles swelling with fresh, terrifying power, his expression staying locked and unchanged. Then he slams his fist into the ground with brutal force, shattering the stone right under him. Watching from a distance, Reina can't believe what she's seeing. This destruction feels pointless, and she blurts out to anyone who'll listen, "What is my father even trying to do?" Dad crouches and drops his hand down, clamping onto a huge slab of shattered rock like it weighs nothing. With a brutal heave, he flings that junk-made projectile, and Arga has to scramble aside as it slams into the dirt where he'd been standing a second ago. The monster rips out a guttural roar, and before the dust even settles, he snatches up more debris to keep the attack going. A confident smirk snaps onto Argas's face as the new strategy finally clicks. His opponent's not boxing anymore. He's flinging stuff, because straight punches would get him cut to ribbons, and Argas thinks it's smart as long as those throws never land. He gritted his teeth, eyes blazing with panic. Keeping that distance like this just can't stand anymore. She twists toward him and asks if he needs backup, but Arga warns him. If she takes down the creature, it won't count as his conquest. And as she moves, he calls out for her to help him. He snaps in clarity that she doesn't have to jump into the fight. Then he jabs toward the rocky ground and tells her to go grab the person waiting over there. Retone lies crumpled in the rubble, stone still and utterly defenseless. He snaps that he can't strike with full force while she's right in the line of danger. One stray hit could shatter her, and Sissel gets it, taking the job without a fight, only promising him it'll be over fast. Then Reina jumps in too, offering her own help. In the next heartbeat, Sissel disappears without a trace, and Reina just freezes, spinning in place, stunned, trying to figure out where he could have vanished to. Meanwhile, the monstrous vampire's eyes bulge with raw disbelief. Then Arga rockets forward, snapping every inch of distance shut and landing right in front of him in the blink of an eye. Now it all clicks. The impossible speed isn't magic. It's Sissel's trick. She's standing in Arga's spot, winking and flashing a peace sign like it's all a game. Then she turns to Reina's father and praises him for tracking her every move with his eyes. Her lightning-fast move slammed into the monstrous vampire, and a raw, guttural groan tore from its throat as it stumbled back, shocked by how close its new attacker had gotten. The creature's massive body slammed into the cavern wall, shaking the whole ground, and Sissel, right after finishing her lightning-fast swap, stared in shock at the brutal impact. From his new vantage point, he locked eyes with that stunned beast. Then Arga flashed a confident grin and shot his swift ally a heartfelt word of thanks. Reina, the vampire princess, wasn't the only one staring either. From a distance, she tracked the chaos, completely baffled by how someone could shift so impossibly fast. Meanwhile, Sissel, finally out of the blast zone, cradled the unconscious Retone in her arms, and she couldn't help but grumble, "Seriously? You're heavy?" like he needed to lay off the snacks. Safe from harm, Arga stood locked in, declaring he was finally free to move and go all in. Then Reina, still reeling from the blur of it, gasped in shock because she couldn't spot the swap happen at all. His declaration detonated the air, furious roars crashing down, and the vampire monster surged out of the rubble, eyes blazing with rage, fully awake now. When the beast's rage came crashing down, Argus snapped into action. He unleashed his power, called his skeletal serpent Lala, and ordered it to burst forth and torch everything with a dragon's breath. His word was law. Then the skull serpent snapped and blasted dragon breath, swallowing the area in a brutal storm of light and force. The blast erupted and blasted the battlefield into a choking wall of dust and smoke. Reina shielded her eyes, squinted through the haze, and yelled that she couldn't see a thing. From the thick smoke itself, a monstrous roar ripped through the air. Then the enraged vampire launched forward, acting like that brutal attack did nothing to him. He shoved through the choking dust, feral eyes snapping across the haze for his target, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. Just as he pressed forward, a brutal hit slammed into his back, and he stumbled, body jerking out of control as he lurched ahead. His monstrous face contorted with confusion and agony as he snapped his gaze downward. his eyes bulging when he saw something dark drive straight through his own torso. Turns out the attack wasn't a blade at all. It came from something way crazier, a tiny, twitching slime clutched tight in someone's hand. Behind the stunned beast, Arga loomed with a grim stare. You dowing from the monster's eyes. Arga barely dodges the monstrous vampire's final, desperate punch. Its fist crashes into the ground where he just was, and the thing howls with pure rage. Reyna and Sissel, watching from afar, stare with wide, stunned eyes. And right as he struck, the deadly weight of Reyna's father hit the breaking point. His monstrous bulk started to crumble, limbs dropping off, until his whole body dissolved into a storm of black particles. As the creature dissolves, its dark essence splashes across the cavern floor. Then Argo locks in a steady, unshakable stare while the final remnants of a vampire lord vanish right in front of him. Once the vampire lord's threat was gone, he spun around and stormed off from where the creature hit, dark, smoky energy trailing behind like a haunting afterimage. Now, he snaps his focus onto the princess, crumpled to her knees, then creeps closer with careful steps, asking if she's okay, and through her tears, Reyna chokes out a final, gut-wrenching goodbye to her father. She gazes up at him, tears pouring down her cheeks, and still she squeezes out a tiny, pain-racked smile. Then she confesses it hurts like hell, but swears she's fine. Her voice shakes as she spills her tangled feelings, admitting that watching her father stay alive in that monstrous condition would have hurt even more. With her resolve blazing, she steps up and formally thanks him for what he did, and Arga just waves it off, his eyes snapping toward the tiny chest that suddenly appeared beside them. He drops to one knee before the chest that just appeared after the fight, swearing it's a boss drop, while a vampire's severed head sits nearby. He can't help but wonder what insane reward could be inside. With her eyes locked on his chest, Sissel's gaze slips past him, and then her breath catches as she spots what's horribly wrong with the defeated vampire's remains. The severed head snaps back to life out of nowhere. Its eyes blaze with a hateful white glow while its jaw gapes open with a crack that sounds way too unnatural. Reacting on the spot, Sissel yells a panicked warning at Arga. The head's still alive, and when he whips back toward her, his face crumples into sheer, total confusion. Before he can even process her words, the monster's head starts swelling at lightning speed, flesh bubbling, twisting, and tightening like it's seconds away from exploding. With zero time left, Sissel explodes forward, clamps both Arga and Reyna by the head, yanks them back with everything she's got, and rips through the air screaming for him to get away. Her face hardens with pure focus as she yanks them out of the immediate danger. Just a split second later, a brutal explosion detonated right where the head was vaporizing the ground in a flash of pure destructive power. A blast tears through the air, smoke roaring outward, even though Arga seems to have crushed the vampire. But the fight isn't finished. From the chaos's edge, Reyna's face is pure terror, sweat pouring down her skin as she shrieks Arga's name into the dusty dark. A colossal blast of dust and smoke erupts from the ground, swallowing the entire landscape as the explosion rips through the air. Watching the wreckage, Reyna's face tightens with dread. She blurts out Arga's name, voice shaking with worry, while Sissel stands right beside her, calm as stone. She staggers at the brutal blast's raw force, finally seeing her father's power burst out all at once, and she's like, wait, so that evil god's power wasn't amplified, and Arga really did get strong enough to track my every move. Then, confusion hits hard, as she blurts out why he didn't just try to run. She cuts in with a serious face, admitting what she's about to say is just speculation. As the smoke swirled, Arga finally felt he'd been hit by a mental contamination, the kind only an evil god can unleash, and he didn't waste time guessing. Reyna's father must have fired that mental strike right then. She presses on with her hunch, wondering if his power is trapped or locked in place. And Reyna just stares back with wide-eyed shock, totally refusing to believe that could be true. Elena snaps around when a voice from behind her calmly asks, "Am I wrong?" He bursts out of the thinning smoke, his lower half still breaking into particles. Then Reyna's face lights up with pure relief as she gasps his name, grateful he's safe, and Arga calmly steps in, insisting it wasn't an attack, just something weirdly similar. He'd already seen the danger coming, so when the explosion hit, he had Lala stand guard and shield him at the exact second. Then he handed Reina a little chest and swore it was a gift from her father-like. Some boss drop straight out of fate. Sissel asked if it was already opened, and Arja snapped back that he didn't just receive the chest. When a man's consciousness crashed into his mind, he straight up got her father's feelings instead. That moment came roaring back. Reina's father's grotesque, headless body sprawled in the wasteland, and the detached head still begged him as he turned to walk away. He snapped back to the present and kept talking, but that plea kept hammering in his skull, flooded by raw emotions and a rush of vivid images. Then, it finally tore open the truth, her father's desperate plea for her to protect Reina. The moment Reina heard his final words, her mask snapped and tears poured out of her. And just when it seemed like that was it, Arga warned them. The message had more. The father's fading face flashed back, and in that last moment, it begged him to pass on one final request before it vanished for good. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, Arga burst in carrying a gurney, and on it was her petrified, stone-still tone. Kanado and Sans gasped her name in pure shock, as Arga declared she'd brought her back. The chaos yanked Guildmaster Nimmerus's grim attention, and right away other adventurers swarmed in, whispering like crazy. Had Medusa finally crushed her, or did she tangle with a Hydra and come out like this? Arga stands in front of his old party, face carved from ice, and reminds them of the labyrinth they couldn't crack. Then tells them the truth. He took it down solo and came back untouched. Now he leans in and presses the question, "So what are you doing next?" Kanado's reply isn't rage, it's a desperate plea, and he barrels straight through Argo's taunt, demanding to know how he plans to bring Raton back to her normal state. It keeps going, basically begging to know if Arga snagged a curse-breaking item from the boss loot. Then you glance at Raton's petrified body and the awful answer hits. No easy fix, just dread. Now Sans and that blonde adventurer push forward, their voices sharp with accusation, demanding answers about how he'd betray her, even asking if he really cleared the labyrinth at all. Arga just meets them with a crushing, wordless silence. His silence hides raw, burning contempt inside. He seethes at their total lack of gratitude and how they keep choosing only what's convenient for themselves. And he can't help but ask himself whose fault this whole mess really is. He finally admits he's been a fool for sticking with them for so long, and Grimace turns into a plan as he decides to make them swallow the same misery they handed him, the joke they mocked, the one they claimed they could never stop, the one who beat an opponent they couldn't even land a hit on. As the showdown cranks up to a roar, Nemera jumps in, his voice slices through every word like a blade. He points at Kanado's party and declares they're the ones who should be hunting down the cure, blasting them in public for abandoning Righton. Arga watches, but his face hangs in that tense, half-broken silence. The Guildmaster's words crackle through the room, murmurs explode as adventurers remember this party and realize what happened. And when the crowd's mood flips, one fighter yells that ditching your own companions is the ultimate sin, trapping Kanados' group in a corner as their peers condemn them. A mug slammed into his head, and he flinched hard. While the crowd's rage detonated all around him, other adventurers started hurling insults and junk, screeching that he was scum and a disgrace to their profession. Beside him, Sans screamed too, caught in the same brutal blast, begging them to stop, as the chaos kept roaring louder and louder. A furious mob shoved in tighter and tighter, their voices stacking into a roar. Then a big blonde adventurer bellowed, demanding the trash keep its distance from them. Crushed to the ground by the assault, he clutched his head and screamed in pain. Then it hit him like a hammer. Damn it, Arga. He'd seen this coming and arranged a hand over at the guild, just to bring them down. Desperation hit him like a wave. He jerked up and spun toward the only person who could save them, the Guildmaster. He begged Nemera for help, swearing the others had no idea what was really going on. Numerous looked down, face carved in stone, and just cut straight through every excuse. This was the real problem. They had left their companion behind. He argued that if it wasn't abandonment, it wouldn't add up that only she was petrified while the rest walked away unscathed. Another adventurer nodded along, saying no matter what the story was, ditching her was shameful behavior. While Kanado just froze in shock, Argus's calm voice sliced through the tension, declaring they both needed one thing: reflection and punishment. His words sealed everything. Right there, a formal judgment rang out through the guild hall, and Kanado and Sons were demoted down to your rank, as if the verdict hit them in the chest, leaving their faces locked in stunned, breathless disbelief. He reels from the news, face twisted in pure anguish. Being dropped to E ranks is a gut punch after 5 grueling years of fighting just to finally reach that S rank. While Kanado wrestles with his fate, Argo whips around and strides out of the guild hall only for the guildmaster's savage voice to chase after him, barking that he better find a cure for his petrified companion and that the punishment was more than earned. Right as he starts to get away, a familiar voice slams into him and asks if he's finished his business. Reina steps out in a gorgeous gown, Sissel right beside her, and Arga just watches like, "Yeah, your father nailed it." Reina thanks him, then Sissel wastes no time. He leans in and demands to know where his revenge stands against his old party. He admits it. Sure, his old companions got crushed by suffering, but now he's done caring about them. He says the sweetest revenge is having good companions at your side. Now, Sissel nods and asks what he'll do next, and Arga shoots back with a hard, determined stare that he's already made his choice. Sissel, stunned by his answer, Reina's confused too, blurts out that his revenge is already done, then her eyes widen when she finally gets it. He's hunting a new purpose for his father. Arga leans in and confirms her suspicion was right, because her father had one more request waiting for him. He kicks off the new mission and lays it all out how Reina's father showed him pictures of an ancient building and a crew of shady, robed strangers. He's convinced her father didn't just see things. Those visions were pieces of their real memories, probably unlocked the instant the fake clergy pumped him full of an evil ghost's power. Standing shoulder to shoulder on a stone rooftop, Sissel lets it sink in, then confirms that this has to be the very hint they were given, and she fires off the question, are they using it to hunt down their enemies and tear out their revenge? Her sharp question snaps Arga around, to Reina demanding if she wants revenge too. Reina jolts, then quickly blurts out that yes, she's in. Even after she answers fast, her eyes drop with a worried look, and she can't stop wondering, was it really okay to drag Arga and the others any deeper into her family's mess? Sensing her hesitation, Sissel leans in and reassures her. Don't hold back. We're companions now. I was going after those culprits myself. She lays bare why she's personally invested, saying she wants to feed that evil god, and that's why she's terrified for anyone who dares get close to those vile entities. Her unshakable declaration snaps everything into place. Argus breaks into a confident grin, agrees without hesitation, and declares that it's time to set out. He charges ahead through the shattered bones of a forgotten city, his voice ringing in the silence as he calls out their first mission to hunt down that ancient building he saw in his vision. While the new party has no clue, 3 figures draped in shadow lurk among the ruined streets, hidden, deadly, and full of an ominous secret. One of them blurts out that the vampire noble is gone, and the other swallows it in a bleak, grim silence, because if humanity's strongest had stepped in, then the end was always coming. The speaker cuts off that assumption and snaps the truth into place. It wasn't Sissel who landed the final blow at all her Tamer companion Arga did, and he even has a second job. Beside him, that older soot-dusted guy can't believe it, and scoffs hard. The talk keeps rolling, and one of the figures blurts that the vampire princess has teamed up with them too, and everyone agrees that if Argus's party gets involved, things are about to get dangerously messy. One of the cloaked figures shoots a sly, knowing smile, and then declares they've got a brand new plan. They whipped around to face their companions, arms flung wide, and with total conviction, they swore it. Whatever noble dream they were chasing, nobody out there, not even the toughest opponent, was getting under their skin. Out in the distance, the man they've been plotting around just stands there, cold and unshaken, Reina and Sissel flanking him, as Argus finally cashes in his revenge, and from here on out, his way is wide open. Anything that dares block them gets wiped out. In a cold, cavernous facility, a scientist tells a hooded figure that everything's right on schedule, and the cloaked man just nods, then strides down a long flight of stairs, his footsteps roaring through the huge chamber. The scene widens and boom, you're staring at a gigantic, twisted laboratory. White-coated scientists hustle around massive, bubbling vats, all wired together by a chaotic maze of pipes and machines, each one cradling a dark, monstrous thing suspended in liquid darkness. The famed elder closes in on the scientist and bluntly tells him he's counting on him to keep the work going. Then the scientist immediately nods and agrees. The Monem monster drifts inside its containment pod, looming over bubbling liquid like a waking nightmare. The elder stands on a high walkway, soaking in the gorgeous view, until a brutal tremor rips through the facility and shakes everything to its core. Above, the ceiling starts to crack, crumble, and collapse, while the scientists below scream in full panic. A massive explosion crashes down from above, ripping the laboratory apart as the machinery gets torn to pieces and the glass vats shatter, blasting debris flying everywhere. The blast hurls the scientists flying like rag dolls, smashing them through the air and scattering their bodies across the wreckage of their own experiments. The hooded elder gapes upward in pure disbelief, snarling, "What's going on?" Then it hits him Arga must be here too. His eyes flare as he mutters that Arga's become wildly famous. Urga and Sissel just stand there, unshaken, while everything lies in ruins. And Arda smirks, shocked that some creepy old man he doesn't even know would know his name, while Sissel leans in and says, "Guess you really made it big." The old man, visibly racked with pain, faces the groaning hooded figure and demands to know how they found this secret place, while Arga explains that a gentle vampire noble slipped him the hint. A confident smirk snaps onto his face as he finally spills the real reason he's here to hunt down the people who wronged someone and make them pay. The elder clergyman stroked his chin, thinking hard, then decided, since they were right here, to interrogate them about their true objectives. His calm snaps like glass. He spins around and roars at his subordinates, yelling at them to unleash the magic beast and tear into those intruders right now. At his command, two monstrous serpentine nightmares erupted from the shadows, roaring with a brutal, gut-churning fury. As the creatures slammed toward the trio, the elder clergyman spots his one shot alone. He knows he's outmatched, so he surges for the exit, while his own monstrous abominations choke the fight and hold them off. A battle ends in a blink one impossible, lightning-fast slash tears through the air and cleanly decapitates both monsters in the same instant. The clergyman freezes his escape plan already sent, then his soul drops when he whips around and finds Sissel standing right behind him, blade still poised from the strike. While she kept watch, the elder clergyman's eyes wouldn't leave Raina. Her devastating power flat out stunned him, and he started wondering if the vampire noble's daughter was born with that strength, or if it came from dangerous fusion tricks. But Raina stood over the monster's remains and calmly told him she hadn't fused a single thing. Cecil then broke it down. This was Raina's true power, lying dormant until the rage in her heart finally flared over what had been done to her father. Vargas strode up, demanding the old man spell out what he did to steal his father's reign, and the clergyman, trapped and shaking, could only choke out a terrified threat, promising the impudent brats would regret it. That threat got smothered by sheer speed. Raina rocketed forward and, in the blink of an eye, her strike dropped the clergyman to the ground. Her quick move made Arga snap, warning her not to kill their captive before they could pry answers out of him. Raina shot back that the man had made a shady move, and it pushed her to act. She glanced back and insisted through sheer force of will that even with her attack he was still alive. She hadn't actually killed him. Yeah, that clergyman was sprawled on the ground still alive, but completely wrecked, spitting curses at her. And Raina told them she'd use blood magic to keep him going just long enough so he could talk, then push them to use that precious time wisely. Hearing that, Sissel strode up to the downed man and demanded to know if their real goal was to resurrect the evil god she'd once crushed. Then the clergyman recoiled in disbelief, and before he could even finish thinking, he exploded, shouting that it was all nonsense. That old denial gets obliterated. His eyes go wild as he blurts out that the Lord Evil God's revival isn't some fantasy anymore. It's happening soon, and they've been pushing it forward this whole time. He breaks it all down and reveals a syringe packed with dark liquid, then admits they scraped up the evil god's leftover blood and injected it into different creatures, an experiment to see exactly what happens when that god tries to come back. Hearing that, Reina's face snaps with pure fury. She finally understands her father was sacrificed for this monster's vile purpose, meant to be a noble offering, not some ordinary death. With a crazed grin, the clergyman seals her worst fears, declaring that every test subject is doomed to be turned into food for the Lord Evil God. He locks his gaze on Sissel and spits out that she's the sinful daughter who once killed their god, then demands to know if she truly understands the plan to feed the test subjects, body and blood included, to amplify their power. He flashes a triumphant grin and vows that their god will crawl back into the world with power way beyond what Sissel managed to take away while, right beside him, Reina murmurs that her father really got the short end of fate. The clergyman's warped logic finally snaps Sissel's comb. She explodes, screaming that he's a bastard, tearing apart his so-called honor, and saying that if her father had grown the way they planned, getting handed over to that evil god would have never been anything honorable. As her furious words rip through the air, Arga stays ice calm, just watching. Diane Dwinka won't stop talking. Yeah, it's infuriating, but it's actually useful. He listens while the elder clergyman's severed head cackles, swearing the god's resurrection can't be stopped, and that knowing the plan changes nothing. Then the elder vows Arga and his crew will all die on the spot, and Arga just calmly declares, no, that can't happen. Just like that priest warned, the floor starts to churn, bubbling, buckling, and shifting until a sickening mound of rotting flesh and dark liquid surges up from beneath, swallowing everything around it. Cecil stared at the nightmare in front of her, jaw tight, and then she snapped that the thing was swallowing dead monsters and humans alike, slurping flesh and blood together until it fused them into one living nightmare, a desperate kind of magic. The clergyman's severed head hurls back her theory with a vicious, triumphant sneer. He had kicked off the spell before the blade fell, and now everything nearby will melt into one grotesque lump of flesh, feeding the evil god. With a final, maniacal shout, he declares that this nightmare has room for them too. Then the grotesque mass crashes forward, tendrils of flesh whipping toward the three adventurers. Even with danger breathing down their necks, Artie's face never twitches, his eyes narrow to razor points as he sizes everything up with ruthless, pinpoint calm. He darts through the chaos in a blur, already smirking because the threat is way too slow to land a hit. Then, with a single snap of movement, he kicks the clergyman, still blabbing, and the man goes flying. He rockets away from the heaving wall of flesh, and it lunges into the exact spot he just vacated. Then the clergyman's head, blasted loose by the kick, lands right in the monster's path and gets swallowed up in an instant. He nods, finally catching the old man's trick, just a ruthless delay so that grotesque mass can keep swelling. With nothing else left to learn, he cuts the silence with a cold, final goodbye. He steels himself, shoves the rising horror behind him, and barks an order to his monstrous sidekick, Lala. Burn them all, and torch the whole facility. From deep inside the flesh, the elder's disembodied head spits out one last vicious curse. The skull serpent snaps to obedience and smashes down on the clergyman's head, swallowing it in a violent surge of ruinous power. Then his last curse tears out as a blood-curdling scream of agony. The scream gets swallowed up as the whole mass detonates in a blinding, violent blast, shaking the chamber like it's about to break. As the light dies out, the only thing left of that grotesque monster is a smoking crater burned into the earth. Sissel whips around to Arga, face burning with sadness, and admits she'd planned to strike down the clergyman herself. Reina shoots in a quick apology for Arga, then reminds Sissel that other monsters still have to pay for what they've done, making Sissel stare ahead, stunned, and ask why anyone would even dream of bringing that evil god back after all the pain it took to finally defeat it. She lets out a tired sigh at her own tangled question, then waves it all off like it's nothing more than pure pain. His dismissiveness hides a burning resolve, because when the evil god reaches this far, he's the one stepping in. He clenches his fist and tells himself that taking down something that strong will drag him closer to Sissel. Then departs his plan out loud, and Sissel shocked stares, wondering if he's really that sure. He stood beside Sissel and Reina, staring out at the wild, brutal land ahead, where their road toward the goal was laid bare like a warning sign of what was coming. because one truth hit him harder than anything else. He'd clawed himself up from rock bottom, and now he was poised to stare down a god. So the real question burned in the air. Could Arga and his friends actually beat the evil god? A young woman fiercely grinds fresh herbs into a bowl, whipping up a rough, ready-to-use poultice. She wraps up her work, then dabs that stinging mixture right onto Kanado's bruised cheek, and when he winces, she fires off the reason do it fast or it won't heal right, as she laments that, yep, they're sleeping outside again tonight. Frustration keeps spiking in his chest as he snaps that everything would be so much easier if they had a real healer, or at least something like an inn he can afford, and the rough ground suddenly feels brutal under his battered injuries. Panyon drops her gaze, face set, and snaps back that their healer is still trapped in stone. So with no money for an inn, they can't even risk going to the guild to try earning more. He grits his teeth, replaying every humiliating moment, and knows one more try at work will only get them beaten again, injured and battered as those angry men shout them away. His mind drifts straight back to Arga, the reason they got shoved out in the first place. He can still hear those crowds screaming that Arga ruined everything, pouring accusations like poison and swearing the real injustice was being treated like villains. Right as his thoughts spiral, he snaps back when his companion asks, "Are you hurt?" Right before he can even answer, a tiny creature explodes out of the tall grass. Kanado jolts with a shout, urging his companion to freeze. He's convinced it's a monster. A tiny, harmless-looking serpent creature giggles as it playfully coils around his outstretched wrist. He gapes at his arm in pure shock. The little wound the creature left is gone, completely wiped out, and he blurts, "It's healed." He whips around to a woman who's shown up out of nowhere demanding her name, and she just stays, calm eyes on the damage, telling him she'll heal both of them, even with that tiny serpent monster curled on her hand. Her face is swallowed by shadow, bangs blocking her eyes, yet she still flashes this faint, chilling smile. Meanwhile, in a faraway town, Argus slumps alone at an outdoor table, staring into a steaming cup like it's his only comfort. He crossed his path, and then a wild rain of beams detonated in the air, pure joy blazing from every single one. You can tell she's in a great mood. She practically beams and says, "Of course I'm happy," right while she's out on a date with Lord Arga. A calm face cracks just enough to show surprise when he blurts, "When did this turn into a date?" Reina fires back that since it's only the two of them, of course it is. While Arda just sips his drink and tells her to stop trying to ruin the vibe and to take a breath, because this is only a quick pause before they go smash the evil god. Their mission hits her like a chill. She goes quiet, stares him down, admits she knows next to nothing, and fires one big question. What even counts as an evil gosh? She pressed him for answers, and Arga could only stare back honest about the fact he had no clue. He kept trading every scrap of what he knew evil gods, they said, crash in from space, and if they grow strong enough, they can wipe out entire planets. He tossed out a simple apology for that brutal subject, and Reina went silent, weighing every word while Arga doubled down, sealing their mission. If that deadly thing really was coming back to life, then they'd have to crush it. Resolve hardened her jaw as she realized this wasn't just about avenging her father anymore. The whole situation had spiraled way past that. He reassured her, told her she didn't owe an apology, then hit her with the real reason her quest had warned them that the evil gods were reviving, and that revival fed his own plans too. Before she could respond, he changed the subject and pressed, "So tell me, do you know how many people have ever actually managed to beat an evil god?" He answered his own question. And boom, a shocking truth hit like a punch. In all their world's history, only 2 people had ever pulled off a win like that. First was Sissel, and second was a guy named Lukami Milktea. That name meant nothing to her until Arga stepped in and said, "Lukami's a tamer, just like me." Then he leaned closer and bragged that she's the first, the strongest, the legendary SS-ranked tamer ever, and the dream that everyone chasing this path, including him, lives fives. His eyes burned with ambition as he swore that if he smashed the evil god, he'd finally stand shoulder to shoulder with those 2 legends and lock in the next step toward his ultimate dream, becoming the strongest. He blurted out his gratitude to Reina, saying her meeting him had finally handed him this chance. Then her curiosity exploded at the word legendary hero. So what kind of person is Lakumi Milti? She leaned in close, listening like every word mattered, her soft smile lingering as she waited for his answer to hit. Arga finally admitted he'd never laid eyes on the legendary Tamer, and even Sissel swore she'd never met her either. Reina couldn't stop talking about how shadowy Lakumi really was, and Arga said people whisper that she's off hunting the legendary monster Balzard. But honestly, it's all rumors. Nobody has the truth. She stayed upbeat and told them, if you keep getting stronger, you'll find me one day just like you found Sissel, right by the doorway. Reina's mind snapped to Sissel, because she still hadn't shown up. And Art calmly insisted it was probably just too early for her to have come back. Outside the city, a lone figure in a dark hood lurked in the shadows, staring from afar and savoring the moment like he had all the time in the world to wait for those sizzling souvenirs. The man sneered at how careless they were, while the strongest woman in humanity was off shopping, and the other two sat back with tea, then smirked at their smug, relaxed sense of victory, despite his looming size. His eyes narrowed with icy intent. This was it. They'd grab their moment and buy time for the revival of his Lord Evil God. With his enemies knocked out, he announced he'd drag the Lord Evil God as far away as possible, so nothing could stop the revival. They still didn't know where his lord was, even if he admitted they'd hunt it down sooner or later. He lifted the spyglass to his eye and declared, dead confident, that once the revival finished, victory would be theirs. His confidence got torn apart the second he saw Arga staring straight at him, and panic sparked in his chest as he wondered, had he really been spotted? But Argus didn't even look toward that distant figure because he felt it. A familiar aura, right there in the distance, Lulu's. And the moment it hit him, he knew exactly what was coming. Sissel had returned. This exchange left the hooded observers completely baffled, staring at each other like, what on earth are they talking about? From a stretch of nearby woods, a young woman with long, light hair burst into view clutching a strange black backpack. She greeted him with a bright, cheerful, hello, and the hooded man snapped back in shock, stammering as he demanded why she was even there. She said it like it was obvious. Once you know, you can spot the evil god cult guys because they reek of evil god blood. Then she shot him a question, can you smell it too? And reminded him that, just like Lulu, he also comes from the evil god lineage. The moment it hit, terror pinned him in place. He stared at her in total disbelief, brain refusing to process how she was standing there while smoke billowed from the wreckage of his operations in the distance, proof of the destruction she'd unleashed. She calmly confirmed his worst fears, telling him they'd already wiped out every last research facility he still had, then revealed the terrifying secret. With their ability to smell evil gods, they tracked each site down and struck so fast he never even sensed them coming. Her face stayed calm, but her words hit like a hammer. She said she almost never gets angry, yet the moment someone dared to revive an evil god, she promised that would never happen. With her threat hanging in the air, the hooded man's follower snapped his head toward him, demanding answers. What do they do now, and who screwed up by missing her moves? Then he pressed again. Should they hand the call over to Reina? Right as his leader opened his mouth, the follower snapped into action and tossed a tiny spear that exploded into a blinding flash. Then he bolted, using the blast as cover, while Lukumi just watched the whole thing unfold, unshaken. Suddenly, Arga burst onto the scene, eyes wide with shock, and it hit him like a punch. This was way bigger than he'd imagined, and his instincts screamed to retreat and regroup. He stood right in front of Lukumi, and she just stared back with that calm, unshakable face. Then, his sudden appearance jolted the hooded follower so hard he gasped in raw shock. The showdown ended in the blink of an eye. Arga crumpled to the ground, motionless and defeated, while Lukumi loomed over his fallen body. She strides back to Sissel and flashes a confident grin. And when Sissel clocks just how fast she moves, she smirks. Those expectations were naive, then points at the beaten Arga lying on the ground, saying plainly, there's no escaping this. Once the danger is over, she grins, holds up two fingers like a warning sign, and declares she's found where the evil god is hiding. Elsewhere, up in a field with a view of the distant city, Kanado and the pigtail girl stare in shock, gaping at the mysterious healer. Because she didn't just heal a few people, she wiped out the damage and saved them all. The healer leans in, face heavy with grief, her bangs hiding her eyes as she murmurs, "The more I dig into this, the worse it gets." Hearing that, Kaneda snaps into full agreement. He roars that Arga is absolutely ruthless, driving his old comrades into this kind of despair, and he demands she finally understand what she's done to them. Her eyes snap into view, blazing with razor-sharp intensity, and she locks onto him, then lays it out straight. If they want revenge, she'll help them. When Anato hears the word revenge, she freezes, then fires back that she's a Tamer too, and she won't ever forgive what Arga did. He locks eyes with her, thrusting out his hand like, "Who are you?" And she smiles, says she'll make him stronger, then drops the truth. She can use fusion techniques too. Elsewhere, another heavyweight finally stepped into the spotlight. She flashed a confident grin and cradled a tiny, weird, three-eyed creature in her hands, then introduced herself as Lukumi Milk Tea, while her real mission stayed locked behind a veil of mystery. Reina stares up at a massive, cylindrical stone tower squatting deep in the canyon, her jaw dropping as she asks, "So this is the labyrinth where the evil god's hiding, and this is the first one." A young woman with long, light-colored hair shuts down all doubt and declares it with total confidence. She's heard the same confirming stories from multiple cult members. The team slips through the grand entrance into the labyrinth's heart, and she lays out the plan by stuffing their target into a brutal SSS rank maze. Their enemies kept the curious away, so it would be almost impossible for anyone to stumble on them. Inside, a hulking wolf man leans in and apologizes, like, "Please, if this turns out wrong." But Arga doesn't even blink. She shrugs it off and says it's fine either way. Suddenly, a gigantic saber-toothed beast explodes out of the side and lunges toward him, its claws stretched wide for a brutal strike. The creature gets dropped in a blink, slumping onto the stone floor and exposing the treasure chest it was guarding, while the wolf beast man bellows as Articomely gapes and realizes even if their main lead is a bust, this place is packed with rare loot to grab. He and the others keep pushing forward until the trail slams into a fork in the road, and when the two paths split apart, the light-haired adventurer calls for them to split up and take both routes. She pitches her plan. She'll pick one road, and if it hits a dead end, she'll slam back the way she came and take their route. Arga weighs it for a second, then nods and agrees that his crew will do the same. She watches, visibly thrown for a loop, as Reina frets about Sissel's safety now that she's alone. But Sissel brushes it off with total confidence. Everyone in the group agrees she can handle herself. Yet they still move forward with caution, scanning for traps or any sign those cultists are waiting to pounce. His eyes snap to Reina, and in the blink of an eye, her face goes wide-eyed with shock. He leans in and demands what's wrong, but she can barely get the words out, as a sudden, terrifying realization hits her. That initial shock snaps into this breathless, flustered excitement. She blushes hard, clasps her hands, and blurts that since Sissel's gone, it's just the two of them, completely alone. The idea makes her heart race, because what if Sissel left for their sake, turning their whole exploration into something that feels like a real, secret day together? He's completely unimpressed by her romantic idea then. With a sharp command, he shoves her back into the shadows. Reina freezes at his tone, blurts an apology, and scurries off fast, swearing she'll stay quiet. While Sissel presses on alone, she barrels into a grim, stony corridor that just cuts off dead in her face. She stops at the rock-choked end, stares, and admits this route is a dead end. But don't think that hallway is empty. When the shadows peel back, a monster's face lunges out, jaw wide in a silent snarl, and rows of razor teeth glare at you. Her senses snap to life. She whips around, eyes narrowing as she reads the air like a map, and her face hardens when she understands it. These aren't just monsters. Their presence reeks with the unmistakable, vile scent of an evil god's blood. The scent gives her a clear answer. Two ghostly, gaunt creatures with towering, flowing manes step out of the shadows, their clawed hands clawing through the tangled hair as they close in. She squared up against that hairy abomination, and its twisted voice rasped, like it recognized her, like she must have lived long enough to get filled with the evil god's blood. You is one of the cult's research survivors. Her face didn't even twitch, as she snapped back demanding if they weren't the real villains for trying to wreck the world, while that nearby tentacled beast seethed with rage, barking that she had no right to kill their comrades. Rage swallowed him as her defiance sparked. The hairy monster lunged and shrieked for her to die, while Sissel calmly dug her hand onto her katana's hilt and stood her ground. That creature's hair turned into a deadly weapon, whipping forward in a frantic burst of razor-sharp, spear-like tendrils. In the blink of an eye, she got trapped in a deadly squeeze-hair spears, snapping in from one side while the tentacle beast's whipping appendages crashed down from the other. Steel flashed so fast you couldn't even track it, and the hairy abomination got split clean and half right, in the middle of its meal. When the creature's severed torso hit the ground, it gurgled one last curse you couldn't make out. Then Sissel just stared expression, locked down while its body crumbled away inside the glowing sigil that had suddenly burned onto the floor. In the blink of an eye, every defeated monster's remains got sucked cleanly into that magical circle, gone for good, until the only thing left in the silent chamber were thin, ghost-like wisps of smoke. She turns her back on the dissolved ruins, and as she steps out of the chamber, the air whirls around her like the aftermath is still alive. Suddenly, she freezes eyes wide, breath caught as the truth slams into her like a truck. Wait, was that real? Elsewhere in the ruins, Arga and Reyna press forward with razor-thin caution. He figures the path to the evil god chamber has to be close, and she confirms it, until a voice he recognizes instantly snaps them to a stop and calls his name. He whips around, and the moment he sees who it is, his face snaps into startled recognition. It's Kanado. He just throws out a casual wave like he owns the place. Reyna instantly clocks him as the same man who got Arga exiled, and Arga snaps, demanding to know why he's here. Kanado grins and says, "I've been waiting," because he knew Arga would show up. His grin widens as he drops his chilling objective. He's here to kill Arga, the one person he openly can't stand. When the threat hits, Reyna rockets between them, snaps at Arga to hold back, and declares Kanado an enemy. He ignores her completely, eyes locked on Kanado, and a gut-churning unease crawls through him. This whole situation feels horribly wrong. He kept scanning the chaos, his thoughts sprinting. Kanado had been demoted to E rank. No way he should even step into a labyrinth this brutal. And where was Sons? Nowhere. Still, Kanado stood there, unnervingly calm, like none of it mattered, and every single detail screamed that something was off. Right next to him, Reyna scoffed at his hesitation, calling Kanado weak and demanding they stop baying the situation, while Arga dug in and insisted they watch the enemy's moves first. Reyna snapped back with a hard no, glaring pure impatience. Reyna refused to wait, even though her patience weren't exactly small fry. So she surged forward, blared that their time together wasn't getting cut short anymore, and Arga could only shout her name as everything erupted. She vanished forward like lightning and drove her fists straight into Kanado's face. The hit landed clean, but Reyna froze for a breath. Confusion flickered across her face, and she snapped into it. It was only a paper-thin thought, nothing solid at all. The blast slammed Kanado into a full skid across the dirt, but he snapped midair and landed flat-footed, rock-solid. Reyna got the same recoil and crashed down hard, while Argo just stared utterly stunned. The moment he rose, a sinister grin cracked across his face. Then two monstrous clawed arms erupted from his back, thrashing through the air as he spun toward Arga and sneered, asking if he was really keeping a monster that couldn't even obey orders. The sight of those monstrous appendages left Argus utterly stunned, while Ken Otto sneered, locked onto Argus's body, and mocked him for still being a crappy tamer. His eyes fly wide with disbelief. He recognizes that voice, and horror crashes in as he realizes the monster called Kanado was talking about his Reyna. Kanado's voice booms as he stands there. Except now, another figure is fused to his back, Isan's. Her hair is chopped into short, spiky chaos, and she wears the same nasty grin as Kanado. He leans into the taunt, needles Arga, and rips into Reyna's stupidity, claiming it's no different from the fool he once tamed before. He keeps on needling Arga, cackling at the hurt on his face, while Arga can only gasp out Sansa's name in pure shock. Then, Kanado snaps an order at Sansa, telling her to step in and punish the monster for Arga. With his order ringing out, Sans lunges at the downed Reyna and roars that the damn monster should finally obey its master's command. Before she even gets the chance, Arga rockets forward at insane speed, launching a crushing sidekick that slams straight into Kanado. That brutal hit hurls Kanado through the air, and Arga snatches his opening he-barrels over, shouting her name, begging her to wake up as she lies still in the rubble. The hit barely even registered. Kanado shot up to his feet, bursting into laughter like it did absolutely nothing, while Sans stayed latched on and yelled that they'd only gotten stronger. Arga gapes in shock and blurts that he needs answers. Did that evil god cult yank them into this? Kanado looks just as lost, asking what on earth he's talking about, then snaps back. It wasn't a cult at all. It was a kind Tamer who did it. And Arga freezes, completely stunned. Kanado locked eyes with him, smirk burning with cruelty, and in a voice so low it barely breathed, he revealed the name of their benefactor, Lukami. Milty then raked Arta with the truth. Sella, you'd never catch up. Inside the guild hall, the cat-eared receptionist barges in with eyes blazing, and the whole room freezes because she's got a bombshell. She just saw an incredible person, Lukami. The moment the claim hits the group, every adventurer snaps into instant doubt. Especially Namera, who points at Lukami and calls her the SSS-rank Tamer, while another guy swears they haven't laid eyes on her in 4 years. Then the receptionist blows the argument wide open, insisting she saw Lukami right outside town and that she knows her personally. So, yeah, that settles it, doesn't it? She swears on everything she can't be wrong, because back when she was a total troublemaker, she still ended up losing a fight to Lukami. That shocking realization hits Kanado and leaves her stunned. Why is she getting so out of control? Namera shrugs it off, grabs Kanado's attention, and pushes for answers, demanding to know why his party is even hanging around Lukoma. Nimras's warning hits hard. Kanado confirms it after that expression hardens, and he clocks that the ones who told him are right. Lukami's with them. Standing shoulder to shoulder with the determined Sans, he doubles down on that bombshell and promises that Lukami will forge their power until they can finally strike back at Arga for good. At Dibinga with certainty, Arga is next. That bold announcement hits the guild like a shockwave, and nobody can believe it. Razzle immediately blurts out, how did Kanado end up teaming with Lukami? Namura racks his brain too, because Lukami is famous for tackling everything solo. Yet the receptionist swears she saw her standing there alone, so now he's wondering what she's doing teaming up with people she'd normally never bother with, while another adventurer can't stop asking the real question, how could she possibly make them stronger? While the guild hall roars with questions, everything snaps to a barren, rocky wasteland. Arga stands guard, his long coat snapping in the wind as he watches over the pigtail girl asleep on the ground, and behind him, Kanado glares with a fist already clenched. Far off, a lone tower juts into the sky like a threat. He leaned in, jaws tight, as Kanado hit him with a smug smirk and confirmed his worst fears. Lukami, the legendary Tamer, could pull off fusion too, and that same name slammed into Arga's mind like a warning sign for the power he was about to face. Right then, a grotesque merge hit Sonato, and that pigtail girl fused into one brutal, stronger force, and with a smug grin, the fused warrior announced they'd been reborn, their power skyrocketing because of the fusion. Argus's face hit him with pure surprise and unease, and he grinned, calling it a nice expression. Then a roar tore out of him as he snapped the fuse like it was begging for that fear, and he lunged forward to smash straight into the attack. The fight turned into a wild blur one, crushing right hook, then a fast kick, and it shoved Arga on the defensive as the fused warrior cackled like a maniac. He got shoved back by the relentless barrage, teeth clenched as he clicked his tongue in fury, and the impact jostled a small rock up from the barren ground. Africa kept slipping his way out of the fused warrior's onslaught, eyes blazing as he darted for the one crack in the chaos. Then he found it, and in a blink, the rock blasted out of the ground, smashing straight into his opponent's eye with a brutal, sickening splatter. They hit Argus's brutal injury with laughter while the warrior's eye bubbled up and reformed in an instant, mocking his I won moment and asking if he really believed it. Then they dropped the truth. This insane power to regenerate every wound was a gift from Lukami. The fused warriors threw their arms wide, bragging that by fusing with a bunch of monsters, they'd forged bodies no way Arga could ever beat. Argus didn't so much as blink at the display. He told Cooley he felt zero fear or despair in their power, then snapped the spotlight back onto them and asked if that's exactly how they felt too. Their confidence crumbled into pure shock. Argus's face went stone cold as he admitted the real nightmare. He wasn't scared of the situation. He was terrified of their hopelessly idiotic nature. Then he snapped at them about their naivete, demanding to know if they honestly thought their run-in with someone named the Kumi was just coincidence or fate. He pushed forward, voice razor-sharp, and told Claire straight out that Lakomi was part of the evil god cult because they'd been brought in only to be used. He laid out the cult's usual tricks and how they'd probably dressed up as a famous warrior to win everyone's trust. Arga figured that even idiots like them would have hesitated if the group had shown up and admitted, "Yep, we're an evil god cult." The manipulation he spilled came with a brutal price. Arga said the monster they fused with was likely an evil god, and now tainted blood is mixed into their veins. He didn't sugarcoat it. Step by step, they'll start losing their human shape. Like his words were a curse, the fused warrior's body buckled and twisted violently, arms stretching and warping into nightmare shapes as they ripped out a scream of pure agony. He watched their transformation like it was nothing, with cold contempt on his face, and in his head, Argus seized how they always pointed the blame, looked down on everyone, and clung to anyone who'd take them in, because to him, this was the only ending those ugly beings deserved. He glares at that twisted, fused mess and sneers like it's not just their hearts that got wrecked, but their bodies too, now ugly beyond belief. The creature hisses out a curse straight at him, and he just stays calm, admitting they've gotten stronger, but then waves it off like it's nothing, because even upgraded trash is still trash. Rage surged through Arga as diffuse, being exploded forward in a blinding, lightning-fast attack, forcing him to brace for impact and swear he'd settle it with them in this new form. His long whip-like limbs slice through the air, but he just dodges with effortless speed. Seething with frustration, he hears the creature shriek his name, and again it barrels forward, smashing the air with its wild, flailing limbs. He vanishes in a blur's blade, snaps out with a flash, and in a heartbeat he tears the monster apart, launching its severed chunks through the air. The ripped-apart body crumples hard to the ground, getting buried in a choking storm of dust and wreckage like it's finally been beaten. From the shattered wreck, a defiant voice snaps back that it won't die right. With a manic grin, the fuse hisses that it'll regenerate. Even with its vow to regenerate, Arga didn't flinch until he shouted for Lulu the Shoggoth, who ripped across the battlefield with crushed hope, blasting out a shimmering wave that stole everyone's resolve. The fuse swaggered, sneering that a flesh wound like that would regrow in a heartbeat, until the whole process choked mid-spell, and shock wiped the smug grin off its face. The creature screamed in panic, begging to know why its region wouldn't kick back. In then Arda, cool as ice, set it straight. Lulu's an evil god monster, and her waves are made to shut down regeneration in monsters like her. And just like that, Reyna's father, who had healing powers too, got his ability cut off the same way, by Lulu's brutal mental attack. The fused adventurer stared down in terror as the truth hit. My body, it's falling apart. Their form started to dissolve right before their eyes. With one last, soul-ripping scream, the creature's body exploded, turning to dust and pure energy before it could even finish breathing. The fusion shattered, and the pigtail girl crumpled lifeless on the ground, energy fizzing away as Kanato's upper body tore through it, dragging himself forward on raw hatred. "I'll kill you," he snarled at Arga. Just as he tried to move again, a sharp, feminine voice sliced through the air. "Hey!" Reyna dropped from above with a frozen glare, and then, bam-man, entire arsenal of blades and arrows erupted around her, all zeroed in on Kanato's helpless body, leaving him staring up like he'd run out of words. He could only gawk up in pure horror as Reyna loomed over him, her sharp-fanged grin snapping across her face. Without a single word, her summoned weapons ripped down from above, skewering him from every angle like a living storm. He tore through the air with one last agonized scream, spitting Arga's name like a curse and blaming him for the loss, while Arga, eyes locked from afar, watched the brutal end unfold with zero change in his face. His body, shredded by blades, dissolved into a bubbling puddle on the ground, and his final curses hung in the empty silence. Just as he tried to take in the scene, Sissel and the pigtail girl barreled in beside him, and Sissel blurted his name in a panic. As they regrouped, that massive, intricate magic seal on the ground started to unravel, its blazing light dimming fast until it vanished into dust. Staring at the wreckage, Sissel stood shoulder to shoulder with Arga and Reyna, jaw set as the horror hit them. Dive Dobel, the exact same outcome as the last time. She spun on Arga and demanded answers for what just happened, and he hesitated too, admitting he didn't fully understand it, before finally grimly declaring that it was all done for the evil god. He coolly calls out the woman in front of him, saying she's the fake Lakumi, while Sissel snaps back, demanding to know why she toyed with Kanado, and the others claiming they were useless in battle. She just smirks, and Arga answers it for her. They did it because they hated him. The imposter leans in and blurts that those people weren't even human to him, just nutrients, shoved into the plan to power up the evil god. She explains it like a horror lesson, that evil god swells by devouring hatred, and the rage that explodes right when they die is the richest fuel of all. Then Sissel snaps to it, realizing the woman built a brutal loop by turning Arga's haters against her cultists, so hatred keeps breeding hatred and powers keep climbing. As the truth finally hits, the earth under his feet suddenly shakes, then splits open with a violent roar. From the very heart of the chaos, the fake Lakumi shoots into the sky, her whole body blazing with raw power. Then she laughs and declares that the moment has finally arrived to revive the now terrifyingly powerful evil god. She whips her eyes to Arga, flashes a wild, crazed grin, and tells him, almost gleefully, to savor the nightmare that's about to hit.